everybody hear that? I'll do it again. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here for the school committee meeting of October 16, 2023. I have the honor and privilege of chairing tonight's meeting as our chair, Nes Carenti, is traveling tonight, so she is unable to be here. I'm going to read this brief statement about the meeting being held remotely. This meeting is being held in person and or remotely as an alternate means of public access pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023 and all other applicable laws temporarily amending certain provisions of the open meeting law. You are hereby advised that this meeting and all communications during this meeting may be recorded by the town of Hingham in accordance with open meeting law. If any participant wishes to record this meeting, please notify the chair at the start of the meeting in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 20F, so that the chair may inform other participants of said recording. Harbor Media is recording. We are recording for purposes of minutes. Is there anyone on Zoom or in the audience recording? Oh, Aaron, you are? Thank you. All right, Aaron from the MTA is recording. Anyone on Zoom? And sorry, for folks on Zoom, it appeared that there was some disturbance with the audio, whether it was somebody trying to Zoom bomb or what was happening. But we had to mute everybody. So if you need to speak, just please raise your hand. And I know sometimes it can be challenging with seeing people's hands raised. So if you're trying to say something and we're missing you, maybe try to reach to somebody who's either here in the audience or on the committee. We can't really check ours. Yeah. So maybe try to reach out to someone in the audience that you might know is here in person to let them know you have something to say. All right, our first order of business, we had executive session, we're returned to open session, and we have approval of minutes.
Okay. I will make a motion to approve the minutes of the school committee meeting held on October 2nd, 2023.
Thank you, Matt. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, those are approved. Fantastic. All right, our next order of business is public comment, questions and comments. I think we have a lot of folks here who want to speak. Thank you, Wendy. All right, I'm going to read this rather lengthy statement that is required to be read before we start. So, but actually, Wendy, if you want to come up and get ready, you can. The Hingham School Committee encourages community engagement and welcomes questions and comments as agenda items are discussed at the meeting. Hello, Alex. In addition, we've set aside up to 15 minutes at the beginning of this meeting for comments or questions that fall under the purview of the school committee and are not already on tonight's agenda. If any guests wish to speak, raise your hand, state your name and address, and address your comments to the chairperson. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per speaker and must relate to topics within the scope and responsibility of the school committee. As established by Mass General Law, the responsibilities of the school committee are to 1, select and evaluate the superintendent, 2, review and approve budgets for public education in the district, 3, establish educational goals and policies for the schools in the district. Speakers are encouraged to present their remarks in a respectful manner and to consider the privacy interests of others. Public comment is not a time for debate or response to comments by the school committee since it may not be on the agenda. And the school committee is not adopting or endorsing any comments made during the public comment period. In addition to this public comment period, our practice is to provide time for questions and comments from the public on new business items that are on the agenda. So if something's on the agenda, now is not the time to talk about it. I think with the permission of the rest of the committee, we do typically limit this public comment to 15 minutes, but seeing there's a lot of folks here tonight, and I think folks have a lot to say, I think we could go till 7 o'clock because we do have to vote on the bus driver's contract, and Liz Klein is here from the select board, so we said we'd do that at 7. So we've got a good 25 minutes to take comments from folks. So, and if you're on Zoom, I'll sort of go back and forth between Zoom and the audience. A little rusty at the chairmanship. It's been a little while. So if I'm missing anybody, somebody point me out that there's people online waiting to talk. So who would like to go first? All right, Wendy and then Ben? Okay.
Good evening. Wendy Kennedy, 6 Riverview Road. I'm here to set the record straight for the community members to hear. The letter sent out to parents by the school committee made the paras in our schools sound greedy. It didn't communicate the facts in a responsible manner. Para educators are looking for a living wage. To not owe the town money at the end of a paycheck because the paycheck received did not cover the cost of the deductions for health and dental insurance and more. In effect, a negative paycheck. We are not considered permanent employees, even though the town cannot fill open para positions. In fact, we are not informed until mid-August as to whether or not we are employed for the upcoming school year. We are dedicated educators in this town, and our value has been totally dismissed and eroded by this committee. The Hingham Education Association has repeatedly asked the school committee's bargaining team to bargain in open session so that the public can attend in person and get the facts straight. Just last week, Unit B asked again, and the school committee refused, and then decided to file for unilateral mediation, claiming that future meetings cannot legally be held outside of executive session. This comes from the same elected committee members who spoke about the importance of transparency earlier this year. The HEA does not agree that we are at an impasse. There is still more room for movement from the school committee. There is no need for arbitration at this point, except to rule out the possibility of open sessions. The community needs to know that the HEA fought hard to help pass the override, yet this committee didn't definitively include a living wage increase in that override budget, despite the fact that the HEA was in negotiations since December, well before town meeting. I spoke at a school committee meeting earlier this year and specifically asked them to fund that living wage. Residents who voted for you have a vested interest in the town's spending and want to attend these meetings. They have a right to an explanation from this committee as to why you were refusing open bargaining. I live in this community. I have worked in the school district for 12 years and have children that attend Hingham Public Schools. Your committee needs to listen to me, the voters, and qualified educators who take care of the children of this town. We believe that every student deserves the support they need in order to have a successful school day. And that starts with being able to hire and retain staff, bargain openly, and fund a living wage for all.
Ben, I'll take you, and then I think there's somebody on Zoom, so
Okay.
you go, and then we'll take somebody
Okay.
else.
Ben Lockheim, 15 Gardner Street. I come as a teacher and a parent. I have a daughter who's in first grade at South School. So first, both as teacher and parent, I want to read off the current contract negotiations and the updates from the school committee. So this is what's written on the school committee website. And I appreciate the transparency. I'm very grateful for that. But I think it's very important to be accurate. So I'm going to read off two areas that I think are pretty, well, not I think, that are inaccurate. And I'd like to hear your response and see if we can amend those. So from the school committee, as far as contract negotiations are with teachers, I'm reading it, by the way, directly from the website. The school committee's latest offer includes a 7% salary increase over 3 years for all teachers. That does not include, well, actually, let me get to, I'll finish the rest. In addition to the 7% over the 3 years, all teachers receive an increase in compensation each year due to cost of living increases as well as lane increases. If you include the recent proposal of 7% with existing wage increases in place for teachers, a teacher could average an annual salary increase of 5.25% year over year, or 15.75% increase over 3 years. When you say all teachers, or when the school committee writes 7% salary increase for all teachers, in addition to the 7% over 3 years, all teachers receive an increase in compensation, that is not true. There are about a third, I was just speaking to the HEA, there are about a third who are past their last step. So they don't receive anything beyond that potential 7% salary increase over 3 years. So it's important when we're transparent to be accurate. So I'm wondering, can we change that language? What's your plan to?
Can't go back and forth, but I would say yes. I think the word choice there was incorrect. Yes, so we can definitely correct that. We can update that.
Okay, so when do you plan on making that language change?
Do it pretty quickly.
Yeah,
Probably
probably
tomorrow. Yeah.
So the language change would basically say that the only people receiving that potential 15.25 would be the ones who are not
Yeah,
at
we'll
the top of
clarify
the
that
pay.
people at the end of the steps or lanes would, yes, they would only be getting the COLA.
Okay.
Yeah.
The other part that I'd like to bring up is as a teacher and more as a parent. I go to silent negotiations, and I often think, you know, as a parent, put away my teacher hat, but as a parent, how would I feel during these negotiations? And the fact that we're offered this 7% it's called a cost of living adjustment. That's 7% over 3 years. That's 2.5, 2.25, 2.25. Average inflation is 3% just to keep up, right? And we just agreed that about a third of the teachers are at the top step. So they're getting that 7% and nothing else. To me, as a parent, when I have to go to my first grade daughter's teacher and and appreciate and be so grateful for all that she does and how she goes above and beyond both teachers, I find it mortifying and embarrassing that I know that that's what she's being offered. And all the teachers, right? And we're talking about Paris here too, but all the teachers are being offered 2.5, 2.25, 2.25 after COVID, after inflation that everyone in this town went through. And we are all feeling it. And that's the best that we have to offer after we went down an entire percent and then the school committee offered a 0.25% increase. I personally, I'm very cautious in my language because I don't like getting involved. I don't like doing this. And I'm very uncomfortable, I'm sure, as you all can see, doing this. But I believe that this is the time, and to only go up to 2.5, 2.25, 2.25, among other things I'm frustrated with, but that to me is something that we did the town annual, we did the increase, the override, and you guys had plans as to what teachers would want and expect. And I know that teachers do not want to expect this after all that we've been through. So that's kind of all. I'm sure there are other things I'm forgetting that I want to bring up, but I would really urge people in the town, and this is more not a message for the school committee, but people that are listening on Zoom, as a parent, I would hope that you guys would want more than 2.5%, 2.25, 2.25, after all that teachers have struggled through financially and other things. That I would hope that there'd be more push for more money. So people in the town, please put pressure on the school committee to do what I think is right, what I think we all know is right. And that's all I have to say.
If you don't mind, I'm going to take one person on Zoom, and then we'll go to you. Thank you. So I think I saw Aiden's hand up first. So Aiden, we're gonna ask you to unmute yourself, and let me know when you are unmuted. Yours. Aiden, are you?
I just wanted to say that I really like this meeting, and I don't know.
Okay.
I just feel very spoken to.
Okay.
So.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Aiden. We appreciate it. All right. Thank you. All right. Sorry.
Hi. I'm Virginia Payne. I'm a Hingham resident, 74 Hobart Street. I'm also a Hingham paraeducator. I'm a Hingham resident as well as a Hingham paraeducator that has worked for the district for many years. I believe we are an essential piece of Hingham Public Schools and that both teachers and students rely on us. Teachers and paraeducators worked tirelessly to promote the town's override, believing this would raise paraeducators' pay to a livable, sustainable wage. Town residents, including myself, whose taxes have increased dramatically, voted for this also believing that we were voting to help raise paraeducators to a livable wage. Sadly, we were all misled. Paraeducators have been in contract negotiations with a school committee that values us in empty words only for our contributions to the success of students. This message has been heard loud and clear. When asked in negotiation meetings were we even considered in the override, the answer from the school committee was, quote, "No, if we had, the override would never have passed," end quote. Carrie Nee of the school committee is quoted in a March 8th Facebook post as posting, "Budgets are moral documents. What we fund is what we value." When we learned that the paraeducator budget had $800,000 left over in the past 2 years, which could have gotten us closer to a livable wage, the school committee told us, quote, "We had to use that for other parts of the budget." When asked to reconsider that money to be used for us, the response was, quote, "We can't take monies allocated for something else." Imagine our confusion and frustration. The actions of the school committee has shown us that paraeducators are of little value, merely warm bodies, as evidenced by the most recent job postings, in which the level of experience was downgraded from bachelor's degree to a high school diploma, which has only led to, quote, "a revolving door of open paraeducator positions." Teachers cannot teach without our support, and students rely on us. If you ask any teacher or parent, I know they will agree. It's time the school committee respect and recognize paras for the essential role they serve in Hingham's education system by paying them fairly. To expect them to work for poverty wages, or worse yet, a negative paycheck, is not right. And I would just like to leave you with something to ponder. Who among you would continue to work in an essential job you loved with great dedication only to be disrespected and making poverty wages, even after 7 years, only to owe the town money at the end of the week after the outrageous cost of health care is taken? Thank you.
My name is Bonnie MacArthur, and I live at 20 Porters Cove Road. I lived in Hingham for 70 years, and I've been a full-time para for 21. Currently, I make less than $26,000 a year. I've actually taken home a zero check. I am also the bargaining chair for the Hingham paraeducators. I've been trying to negotiate a fair contract since December last year. Many, many things need to change about paraeducator employment to make this a good, attractive job people will want to stay in. But we have steadily narrowed our focus, as school committee tells us all, of the things they cannot do. However, a living wage is something we must do for our paraeducators and for our students. Having spoken to multiple parents from Hingham, they were under the understanding that the override was, in part, for the paraeducators' hourly rate to a living wage. They know how important paraeducators are to our school system and their students. They expressed extreme disappointment that the school committee has not been acting to pay paraeducators a living wage, using the override monies. They asked, were we misled? Were we duped? I told them yes. You were duped into thinking we treat paraeducators with respect in Hingham. You were duped into thinking the school committee was going to do something about it. You were duped into thinking this override would be used for that. We have watched paraeducators leave Hingham and students suffer. The paraeducator have bargained in good faith with the school committee. We were told that the funds were not available this year, even though the override passed. So we lowered our expectations for the years 23-24 and put the living wage into the fiscal year of 24-25 in order for it to be budgeted for. Instead, the school committee has given us what they are saying is their last and best offer. It does not even raise the starting salary for a paraeducator to $25,000 a year. This is unacceptable. Now the school committee has filed for mediation, saying we are at an impasse. Paraeducators disagree. In mediation, the school committee will no longer have to sit across the table from paraeducators as they tell us, no, you do not deserve a living wage. I wish to thank all of the parents and educators who are here to say that with one voice to the school committee, return to the bargaining table, settle a fair contract, pay the paraeducator a living wage. Thank you.
Margaret Curran, 9 Harborview Drive. I am a teacher at the middle school, 6th grade math. I am a mother of a 6th grader at Hingham Middle School who happens to be a student in the CLC. The CLC is the Comprehensive Learning Center. It's described by Hingham's literature as a language-based program for students with complex neurological disorders and multiple learning disabilities. It's designed to meet the learning needs of students who have substantial deficits in their reading, writing, math, and organizational skills. Students in the CLC required structured and intensive instruction and accommodations and/or accommodations in order to learn and maintain academic skills while applying necessary strategies. Some students may have a modified curriculum in one or all curriculum domains. The CLC works to increase a child's independence across academic, language and communication, social and leisure, behavioral and self-regulation, executive functioning, and fine and gross motor domains of development. Multisensory instruction and methodologies are incorporated throughout the student's day. While the CLC is substantially separate classroom where foundational skills are explicitly taught, opportunities for inclusion in general education settings are scheduled as appropriate across a variety of settings to foster skill generalization. My daughter is in 2 inclusion classes. Up until today, she has not had a para in her science class. It's October 16, thanks. I can't keep track anymore because I'm trying to help her at home. And her assistance now in her science class is not a paraeducator. It's the CLC teacher whose schedule has been rearranged. The CLC teacher is also being pulled up into an inclusion class in 8th grade, which I believe is not with CLC students. This happened to my daughter last year in the CLC classroom where her teacher was pulled out to be the liaison with kindergarten students. So we're talking about a special, substantially separate classroom that's not getting, these students are not getting the para support. And this is the tip of the iceberg because I know from my teacher experience about students who are not getting the support that they need either. I'm very concerned. I have been since August about the lack of paras. I've expressed my concerns to many people, many times. I've expressed it to my daughter's CLC teacher, to her science teacher, to her social studies teacher, to her school counselor, to the professional who runs all of the IEP meetings, to my principal, to my assistant principal, to Dr. Cataldo, and to Dr. Adams. I said something in front of all the CPAC parents several weeks ago at a CPAC meeting. And I have said, and I will continue to say, that I want to be a part of the solution here. But I am in the classroom every single day. I have one inclusion class with several students who are supposed to have a para. I got a para yesterday. I'm worried about the consistency of what has happened so far because I have 2 other classes that don't have paras. I'm supposed to have children who are supposed to be taking tests and quizzes in separate settings or small group settings, and it's really difficult to plan that. It takes a lot of planning in advance, and I don't have time to plan for all of this because, for example, today during my duty, which was a directed study, instead of making sure that my students are just doing their work and I'm not supposed to be teaching the whole time. For the entire 47 minutes, I was answering questions and doing math with students because there is no para to help out in my classroom, and because they need that assistance. I have never in my 15 years teaching at Hingham been available before and after school for students for extra help because of the lack of support in our classrooms. And I am burning out. If I'm burning out, these poor kids don't have the support that they don't need in the classroom. There is no consistency when paras are being moved from one place to another. I don't know what to do. I've reached out, and I know that the administration has good intentions, but we're all running backwards and paddling and trying to get where we need to be. We need definitive plans to fill the gaps. I know that there are plans for more people to move on board. There are people who are about to leave. I know that. I can't officially announce that. I'll let them make their own announcements. This is a problem that is not going to end anytime soon. And so as a teacher, as a resident, as a parent, I am pleading and begging and asking to please fund paras appropriately. I will be the first to step up and to speak and to say, I value them more than I could ever possibly tell them.
My name is Steven Salvatore. I'm a para at Hingham High School. I work in the RISE room. I'm also the HEA VP of Unit B. I've received a letter from one of our paras that she wanted me to share with everybody, so I'm going to read that. Hi, Stephen. I wanted to share my situation with you as I mentally process what my benefits are. I'm a step 2, making $17.79 an hour at 32.5 hours a week, which comes out to $578.17 a week before any deductions happen. $427.71 will be deducted from my check every week before dental insurance, life insurance, or state and federal taxes, or mandatory pension contributions. That leaves me with $150.46. Combined federal and state taxes will be about $90.46, leaving me with $60. Dental insurance is $61.86 each week. Our life insurance will be about $25 a week. That leaves me at negative $26.86 a week. Absolutely criminal and disgusting. I will have to eliminate dental and life insurance so I can take home around $60 each week. I'm beyond angry, and don't forget the mandatory pension I'm required to participate in. My immediately family member needs to be hospitalized for a biopsy in 2 weeks. I would like to be at the hospital with him. I'm so new that if I take time off, I won't be paid, and I will owe the school money. Not to mention, if it comes back positive, he needs treatment. Then what? The school board should be ashamed of themselves. They need to do the right thing.
I don't mind speaking here. My name is Pam Amster. I live at 237 South Street. I've been a resident of Hingham for 38 years. In 2018, I retired as a classroom teacher from Hingham. I've also been on the advisory committee. I've organized several override efforts on behalf of the Hingham Public Schools. And perhaps most importantly, I am the grandmother of a student with a one-on-one in Hingham. And it's with great interest and concern that I address the school committee and the community at large. It's been a long time since I've had to do this. I'm a little, with regard to the current negotiations of Unit B for a fair and decent contract. I did a lot of reading these last couple of days about the goals of the Hingham Public Schools and the school committee. And these goals include, in bold, equity and inclusivity. And that's repeated again and again and again. These are enlightened goals, and every citizen in town can embrace these goals with pride. But I'm sure it's not lost on the school committee that this mandate of equity and inclusion is made possible in large part by the very employees of Unit B who have been working without a contract for so long. As a former elementary teacher in Hingham, I can attest to the fact that the paraprofessional staff in the Hingham Public Schools make equity and inclusivity possible. They make it possible. Without them, these are disingenuous goals, and I think you all know it. And I'm shaking like a leaf. As you know, these men and women of Unit B work shoulder to shoulder alongside administrators and teachers. They are charged with supporting students with physical, emotional, learning, and developmental challenges, disabilities, in small groups and as one-on-ones. And a lot of what I was going to say has already been so beautifully said, so I'm just going to cut to the chase. Hingham has for many, many years relied on and enjoyed and perhaps taken for granted the bounty of these hardworking, resourceful, strong, caring, empathetic, clear-thinking, commonsensical, creative, collaborative, and well-trained women and men. I know it because for most of my career, I had a para in my room. And let me tell you, nothing goes forward without a para in your room if they are placed there, if there's a need for them to be there. It is my opinion that the school committee must recognize the paraprofessionals as critical and essential staff and compensate them in kind. To me, that means acknowledging them for the challenging tasks that they are charged with hourly, for their maintaining grace under fire, and for routinely going above and beyond with our most vulnerable learners while making it possible for every student, teacher, and administrator in Hingham to thrive as well. When calculating the monetary value of our paraprofessionals, I ask that you weigh the value of your goals of equity and inclusivity and ask yourselves what the cost of fairly compensating these essential workers is compared to incurring greater out-of-district costs. Because you know, that's the next step for a lot of families. In short, in my opinion, this is not a staff to nickel and dime or to ride roughshod over. We are all aware that the costs of living have increased significantly since COVID. As I see it, your charge as members of the school committee is to fully realize the value of your staff, this staff, be very, very familiar with the work they do, the quality of the service they provide, and as their employer, compensate them fairly and respectfully. It is my opinion, based on firsthand experience over many, many years, that our paraprofessionals perform essential and critical work at a high quality to the benefit and betterment of individual students, classrooms at large, this entire school system, and our town. Thank you.
Sure. No other residents? Okay. Okay. I think I'm wrapping it up, I guess. All right. Hello, I'm Jacqueline Beaupre, president of the Hingham Education Association, representing nearly 600 staff members of Hingham Public Schools, still in negotiations. I wanted to inform the school committee and community that today, October 16th, hundreds of educators of Unit A voted almost unanimously to initiate the first phase of a work-to-rule job action. Until progress is made in bargaining, educators of the HEA will start to only fulfill contractual obligations and end voluntary participation in meetings and programs falling outside of the parameters of the contract. We took this action as a step of solidarity and out of frustration with what we are hearing at the negotiations table and beyond. We were extremely irritated to see the school committee use its resources recently to direct the community to a negotiations update website that exists under the guise of transparency, but is misleading and contains misinformation as been described. In the midst of staffing shortages, record inflation, and increased health insurance costs, the actions and proposals put forward by the school committee are falling short. Hingham will struggle to maintain top-tier schools if resources are not better allocated and if the needs of educators advocating for themselves and their students continue to be ignored. As a current school committee member once said, budgets are moral documents. In Hingham today, some paraeducators entrusted with helping our highest needs students are still making less than $20,000 a year, well below the limit for food stamps. I ask you, what is a quality education for Hingham's children worth? It's time to provide the pay, benefits, and working conditions the staff need in order to do our best for Hingham's children. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate the perspectives. It is important, I think, for everyone on the committee to hear the perspectives and to hear the stories. So we do appreciate you being here tonight and sharing your perspectives with us. It is appreciated. We are continuing to negotiate. So I'm going to actually redo the agenda a little bit so we can move up talking about the bus and van drivers contract. And again, Liz Klein from the select chair. The select board is here to hopefully ratify it along with us. And then since we did have some questions during the public comment, maybe Carrie will do the salary negotiation subcommittee update right after that, right after the van drivers. So we can, okay, perfect, because then we can address some of the issues and questions that were brought in. All right, do you want to take us through the bus and van drivers contract?
Yeah, so we reached a tentative agreement with the bus and van drivers union, which was great. And the union has ratified the agreement. We met with, so before we start, I want to thank the negotiating team, Sandy Fisher and Suzanne Taccio, for their professionalism and their thoughtful discussion during the meetings. I think we all learned a lot during the sessions. And we also want to thank Patrick Cunningham, the transportation supervisor, for his assistance as well. So we have a contract. We have raised the starting salary for bus drivers to $31 an hour, and then a 3% increase in year 2 and another 3% increase in year 3. So it's sustainable over time. We've also made a few other changes to increase student safety and staff safety, and also to ensure the health of the transportation department as we go forward. So a couple of, I won't go through everything, but the agreements are in the packet. We raised the trip minimum for trips with a round trip mileage of 30 miles or more to 4 hours. Let's see, for leaves of absence and for sick leaves, and foreseeable sick leaves, like so a doctor's appointment, they've agreed to providing 2 weeks notice on forms provided by the district, which is helpful. Our buses are equipped with surveillance cameras for student and staff safety, so we memorialized in the contract that they're consenting to be recorded while they're driving the buses. We increased the bonus for safe driving and better defined what that is. We added a Juneteenth holiday if school is in session before and after the Juneteenth, so that brings us up to consistency with some of the other contracts. Added an additional sick day. For the months of February and April, we increased the perfect attendance bonus from $50 to $75. And there's an increase in longevity on there, and we're kind of excited about this. One proposal will enable the district to offer commercial driver's license training for van drivers so they can become bus drivers. This is something, the courses are very expensive. They cost thousands of dollars if you go through a school, but we have somebody in-house who can train them. And it'll be for free. It'll be their time, but they don't have to pay for the tuition for the course. And they will receive a stipend of $1,000 per year if they continue to work for the district as a bus driver. So we're excited about that because it allows us to kind of have some homegrown drivers and ensure the health of the department. So I think we can all feel good about this contract. And again, thank you to the bus drivers for, we got it done in 2 sessions and they ratified very quickly. So we appreciate their assistance with that. Does anyone have any questions?
Sorry, I have a frog in my throat. Apologize. I think Liz. Thank you.
Yes, go ahead, Liz. Yes.
So I'm just kind of new to this process. So I'm assuming Dr. Adams has reviewed.
Yeah, it was part of the
negotiations. Okay. And do we feel confident that this is aligned with the financial management plan?
Yes, so when we planned for the override, we anticipated an equity adjustment for the bus drivers and some of the other unions as well. So this is within the budget, and then with a 3% increase over time, that should stay. It's sustainable over time.
Excellent.
Yeah, so just to clarify, the next 2 years, the increase is 3%, correct?
Yep.
So up to $31 an hour
Yeah.
this year, and then a 3% COLA in '24 and 3% in '25. Yes. Yes.
And is it retroactive to the previous, is it July 1?
Yes.
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 Yeah, absolutely retroactive.
Yeah, all of the contracts.
Yeah, all the contracts will be
are,
retroactive.
Yeah, as once they're settled, then the employees receive the benefits and wages that, starting from the beginning of the contract. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
All right, if no other questions, I would take a motion.
I'll make a motion.
All right.
To approve, to ratify the agreement with the Bus and Van Drivers Union for a successor contract for 2023 to 2026.
Great. Do you have a second? Thank you, Ally. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Including Liz Klein is an aye as well from the select board. That is great. All right, we are ratified and have a contract with the van and bus drivers. That is good news. Hopefully we'll have more of those to come. So Liz, thank you so much for being here tonight. You are free to go, but you're also free to stay. Thank you, appreciate it. All right, so since we were just talking about why don't you want to just give us the salary negotiation update for the other units? 'Cause
Yeah, absolutely.
we are in the midst of multiple contract negotiations right now, so that'd be great.
Yeah, sure. So we are working with 7 bargaining units. 5 are part of the Hingham Education Association, or the HEA. So I'll just go through and try to be as concise as possible. If anyone has any questions, just let me know. So HEA Unit A is our teachers union. We started meeting with the teachers last February, and we've met with them 10 times. The last meeting was on September 14th. We've had some productive discussions. We've come to over 20 tentative agreements with them, which is great. We do remain far apart on several issues, especially wages. As we might remember from the override conversations, the school committee is limited by Proposition 2.5 because the town can only increase taxes by that percentage over year. So we have to make sure that any contract that we enter into will be sustainable over time. Otherwise, we're looking at cutting positions and services, which I think we all worked really hard to avoid. So we are continuing discussions, and our next meeting with HEA Unit A, the teachers, is tomorrow. HEA Unit B, that's our paraprofessional union. We started meeting with this union early last December of 2022, so after town meeting. We've met 14 times so far, and we've reached tentative agreements, I would say, on most things so far. There are a few outstanding, and the big one is, again, wages. We have all said as a committee that we are committed to an equity adjustment for paras. We planned for that in the override. But again, the contracts need to be sustainable over time as we go. So, and on our last meeting on October 4th, it became clear that we're still fairly far apart on wages and some other issues too. So we let the union know that we felt like progress had stalled, and we would like to file for mediation with the State Department of Labor Relations, or the DLR. So we said we felt like we hit impasse, and we invited them to file jointly with us. We'd prefer to do that, and to let us know by the end of that week if they would like to. We didn't hear from them, and so we checked in again on Monday, and then when we still hadn't heard back by the end of business on Tuesday, we filed for mediation. This is just for everyone on the committee. This was new to me too. Mediation it's a normal part of the collective bargaining process. It's a tool that we can use, and it would enable an experienced mediator who's a neutral third party to come in and help the parties come together to move forward. We felt like we were kind of talking past each other a bit. That would allow us to do that. The union did let us know that they didn't feel like we were in impasse in their response. So the DLR will have to sort that out over time. But this is something we're looking at. We're excited about it, actually. I think it's a good thing because it should help us to move forward on this and to kind of get past some of these issues that we're kind of stalling at. Yeah, again, the goal is to move the process along, and we want, just as the bus drivers will now get all of the benefits and wages from the contract we just ratified, we want our paras to do the same. So we're hoping this will be a good tool, and if it doesn't work, we'll be back at the table. So,
And just,
yeah.
Sorry, just 1 second, Wendy, because I was just going to clarify, because with the mediation, we are still bargaining.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So we're not Sorry, because you just said come back to the table, but we
Oh,
will
yeah.
still be at the table.
Yeah.
It's just with the third party
Yes.
mediator helping assist. Okay.
Yes, thank you.
All right. Yes.
Time, you mentioned we're sort of at this point waiting for the DLR to make a decision, I guess.
Mhm.
Do we have any sense of, is that quick? Is that?
It should be quick. I mean, I know there are a number of communities that are in the process of negotiations right now, and so that could hold it up a little bit, but from what I've told, they're
Weeks versus months. to
yes,
hear
yeah,
something.
yeah. They're supposed to be very efficient, so that should be good. Yeah, Ally, did you-
Yeah, what happens if the DLR deems that we are not in fact at impasse? Where do we go from there?
Yeah, and they could very well do that, and then we would just continue with the negotiation process. And we do have 3 meetings scheduled out, so we have one scheduled this week, and then other ones going forward. So we're prepared to do that too if that's what happens. But we think, I mean, if we hope they will. Just having a neutral third party who's skilled at negotiations could be. It's that if that's what it takes to get this done, I think it's a really good thing. So.
Jen?
First, thank you, Carrie, for this update. This is helpful to hear all this information.
Mhm.
My question is mediation non-binding? Is it?
Yeah,
Okay.
it is. So the parties nobody's forced to agree to anything within those meetings. So it's a tool. We're going to try it and see how it goes. But yeah,
Thanks.
Wendy, did you still have a question? It's gone up. Thank you.
I just had a question. I'm confused. You said we started bargaining back in December, and that you said that was after town meeting, but town meeting didn't happen until the spring. So I just wanted to make sure.
the spring of 2020. So we started in December 2022.
And the override and the town meeting was in the spring.
Is that right?
April of 23. Yes.
April 20. Okay, sorry. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't hear you.
Sorry.
Yes,
I
so sorry. So we started-
misread my
yes.
calendar.
Right, so we
Yeah.
bargained way before town
We
meeting
started
happened.
bargaining before town
Okay.
meeting.
Yep.
Yes.
I just want to set that straight.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks.
Sorry. Anything else?
I have the other unit.
The other units.
HEA Unit C is the custodian unit. They reached out at the end of August and requested to begin bargaining. We met with them once and agreed to ground rules and walk through their proposals. It's a good discussion, and we're looking forward to meeting with them again on October 26th. HEA Unit D is the Administrative Assistance Union. This is a brand new union, and it includes all of the a lot of the administrative assistants in the buildings and in central office. And because it's a brand new union, we're going to have to be working together to construct a brand new contract. So it's going to take a little more time than the other ones. We started meeting with them at the end of August and have met with them twice, agreed to ground rules, and we're working off of a draft contract, and we're taking this in chunks and kind of working through it. We came to a number of tentative agreements on proposals that are consistent with our other union contracts, so we could agree to those pretty easily. And we have another meeting with them scheduled on Thursday, so we can work through that. Also, the bus and van drivers union, they are not part of the HEA, they are their own union. And as we talked about earlier, we met with them twice, and thank you to them for ratifying. HEA Unit AA, which is the administrators union, that includes the assistant principals and the department directors. They have not reached out to begin bargaining yet. We did reach out to their attorney, but haven't heard back yet. But we're ready to meet with them. And then the food service union is also not part of the HEA. They're also on a different contract cycle because they rolled over a contract for 1 year during COVID. So they just reached out to request to begin bargaining, and we look forward to starting discussions with them soon as well.
But their contract is for the rest of this year?
Yes, it runs through the end of June, I think. So.
Okay. And then Bonnie, I think you had a question?
I'm going to trip over those things. I just wanted to make something clear that with mediation, we will not be sitting across from each other at the table. We will be in separate rooms. We will be giving our issues and our changes that we have made and showing everything that we've done in the past to the mediator and what we look forward to doing in the future. And then he will reiterate that to the other side and hear their side of it. And it will be a back and forth ping pong action. So just so you know, the mediator's not standing in the room with us sitting around a table. We're in separate situations, separate rooms, separate environments.
like a good opportunity to reset. So we're looking forward to it. And yeah, we'll see how it goes when we hear from the DLR.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Anything else from the committee? All right. So we'll go back to our regularly scheduled agenda. So we're going to flip back over to item 6, which is the superintendent's report from Dr. Adams.
I had 2 items to share with you tonight. One was a memo from the Operational Service Division. You can remember you received this last year. It indicates the estimated rate for inflation for social service programs. This is the increase that we can expect specifically in our out-of-district special education programs. That estimated rate of inflation is 4.69%. You'll remember that this number was a large 12% last year. At least is a slightly more reasonable. We have received notification from 2 schools, out-of-district schools, who are petitioning the state to go even higher than this rate, asking for a significant increase in their tuition. And we expect that there may be a few others who will use a process to negotiate a rate higher than this rate.
14% or the 4 points?
It's for FY25.
Okay. Thank you.
So that's just for your information. Also I provided an October 1st enrollment update that gives enrollment numbers for elementary, middle, and high school, which includes that we are at 3,715 students. Out of district, 46, 3 homeschool, and 3 attending voc or agricultural schools. I also just gave you some graphs that just gave you a 10-year kind of view of enrollment. You'll see that in 2013, we were at 4,237, and through the pandemic, we're pretty steady. Lost about 400-ish students during the pandemic and have been hovering around that, slightly underneath 3,700, losing about 200 students between 2020 and 2023, and haven't quite recovered those students. And then you'll also see data for each of the levels, elementary, middle, and high school. You'll see the drop at elementary from 1,961 to 1,767 over that time, which is about 200-ish students. You'll see a decrease also in the high school. It seems to be leveling off, but and the middle school, it was 844 last year, and it's at 850 this year. So you'll also see numbers for each of the elementary schools as well, which seem a little more consistent overall. But just to give you a glance of the enrollment data for the last past 10 years.
Do we have any sense of whether it's because students are going to private school, or is there like a decrease in that population in town?
I do think you can see in our kindergarten numbers, there does seem to be a decrease in numbers. We will give you, do you remember last year around, I think it was January, we gave you the enrollment by private school. So soon we'll start reaching out to all those schools, getting enrollment of Hingham students in private schools, and that'll give us a better sense of what those numbers, and we can give you some data from some previous years, so you can look at some data overall over several years. So
Great, thank you.
You can expect that in around January. Seem to recall vaguely it was around January.
Yeah,
we did
that sounds right.
And these numbers include the pre-K, the graph for the elementary schools. So it would East include the pre-K in it? I would assume yes.
You'll see that the total 3715 includes the pre-K. Yes, it includes pre-K.
Integrated pre-K, right?
The integrated pre-K, the KIA, is not included. Which is something we talked about that last time, perhaps adding just a little box to give you a sense of the enrollment.
Yeah.
We have 20 students, just a sense of the enrollment, 20 students in the KIA classroom at East and 19 at the KIA classroom at Foster. And those are 4-year-olds, pre-K.
Thank you. All right, that's great, thank you. Communications, do we have any communications received by you? Alex, do you have any student communication for us, any update? No. You're good, all right. How are things at the high school? Going all right?
Nothing notable.
Has the advisory council, has the freshman representative been elected, or is that?
Yes.
That they have, okay, all right, so I'll reach out to you and Leah Viola to schedule a meeting, our first joint meeting of the school committee and student advisory committee.
Sounds good.
Okay.
It is Spirit Week. Do you want to talk a little bit about Spirit Week and homecoming?
I will not be dressing up.
You can share what others are doing. I know it's Spirit Week and there were a lot of pajamas at the high school, and I know there's a theme every day, and then homecoming is this weekend, so there'll be lots of activities, right, this weekend, games.
Yes.
And ways to celebrate our students this weekend, so. Lots of merchandise on sale.
And lots of merchandise on sale. That's great, thank you. Any other communications from the committee? No? All right, let's move to unfinished business. 8.1, to discuss proposed changes to policies BA through BDFA, I'm reading an eye chart, through E3. This is a second read, and we'll probably vote tonight. Ali, do you want to take us through?
Sure. You remember from last time, this is the first half of the B policies we're looking at. They mostly relate to kind of administrative details around the school committee. The first few are just very minor word changes, with the exception in our operational goals of we changed the fourth bullet point to include SMARTY district goals as opposed to just SMART. So we added in the inclusive and equitable piece to those goals. And then the next one just have some really minor word changes until you get to the last two policies, which combine 4 policies into 2, and they focus on the school councils and the school improvement plans. So if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
No changes, right, from last read?
No changes from last week.
Any questions? No? All right, do you want to make a motion?
Sure, I will make a motion to approve the B policies BA through BDFAE3.
I will second. Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No? Great. All right, those are approved. Thank you.
Policy committee.
Let's make sure. All right, item 9 is new business. 9.1 was the memorandum of agreement with the bus van drivers, which we have voted on, so we are good. 9.2 is to hear a report on the spring MCAS results. Dr. Ellis, I'll turn it over to you and Katie Roberts and other assorted dignitaries here tonight.
We're glad to have the team here tonight to share a detailed report. They will not be going through all of the information here, but we'll be providing a big overview. We want to celebrate the hard work of both the students and the staff. It's clear there was great areas of improvement, and you'll hear some of those. Clearly, the efforts of MTSS at the elementary had a great impact. You can see that in our ELA and math scores, as well as there are areas where you'll hear tonight that we need to continue to work on, one being the middle school. And I think it really resonates with some of the discussions we've had around continuing to strengthen MTSS at the secondary level, including the middle school and the high school. But we're grateful to all the efforts of the staff, and you'll see those reflected in improvement in many areas, and as well as areas where we need to continue to focus. So I'll pass it off to Katie.
Thanks, Dr. Adams. So as you know, this is the first of 4 data presentations that we'll be giving this year to discuss and celebrate student data and student growth. So many thanks to Mary Andrews, our ELA director, Dave Jewett, our math director, and Michelle Romano, our science director, for all of their work with their departments in analyzing this data. So again, tonight, what you're seeing is very a high-level overview, but know that much deeper work goes on at the department level to really unpack a curriculum analysis, an item analysis, and really looking at student growth. And Sherry, it might be easier if you just advance. left click. PDF. I think you'll have to actually scroll through. Great. And so as we do every year, we start with our essential questions. So of course, we are looking at the performance of our students, and in particular, we're very curious at how our subgroups are performing on MCAS. We continue to track and monitor our comparisons to pre-pandemic achievement levels, looking for that growth and recovery. And we'll be sharing our next steps in supporting the acceleration of student learning. Sorry, can you advance? Thank you. And so just a reminder, this is yet another sign as we are coming back to our new normal. This is the second year of a return to full test administration. So in many ways, 2022 is really our new point, a launching point for comparison. This year, in addition to having a full test administration, DESE also returned to a full accountability system. So Dr. Adams previously presented our accountability data earlier, and at that time we celebrated, as part of that accountability system, the fact that South School and Plymouth River were identified as DESE schools of distinction. And so some key takeaways of this year's spring MCAS data. We continue to celebrate the growth of our grade 10 students. Performance remains strong for our 10th graders across content areas, so our exit outcomes are very favorable. We are nearing or exceeding pre-pandemic achievement levels in several grade levels, with particularly strong gains in grades 3 to 5 mathematics. As you heard last year, that was a major area of professional development focus last year, and so we really celebrate the growth that was made in grades 3 through 5 in mathematics. As Dr. Adams mentioned, some of the data points that we continue to target in our areas of focus include grade 6 math, grade 8 science, and grade 8 math and ELA subgroups. We continue to, across the board, to track and monitor our subgroups, including students with disabilities, our high needs subgroups, which includes our low income ELL and students with disabilities. And this year we did pull out, we have a new data analysis tool that allows us to isolate low income as a variable. We presented that this evening. 2 data points is not a trend, so we can't draw conclusions from it, but just letting the committee know that that is something that we now can easily track. And just a reminder that MCAS is at this point old data, given that it is from last spring. So we're excited to come back in November to share our beginning of year data, which gives us the more actionable data to work from when working with students. And you all can now recite this slide by heart, but this again just really pulls us back to some of the district initiatives that we are embracing in order to accelerate learning. So you've heard all about our multi-tiered systems of support and the related data that we're collecting and PLC meetings that go along with that. We're continuing to implement our iReady program, including the MyPath program and K-6 math and grades 3-5 ELA. You've already heard from Mary Andrews about our reading program adoption that is underway and is, again, another part of our initiatives to accelerate learning. Michelle will speak tonight about our Open SciEd program. We've been focusing on universal design for learning, inclusive practices, have some additional new data analysis tools, care of the state. We have a new Data Explorer and an Open Architects platform for analyzing MCAS. And we mentioned earlier that we do have a return to being a Title I district with an infusion of funds that go along with that. And so we will be having some additional Title I interventions at Plymouth River School, Foster School, and the middle school that will all be part of our initiatives to accelerate learning. And so Mary Andrews will kick us off this evening with the ELA.
That's not this right.
Dave said maybe if I roll this, it will work. That was a trick. Doesn't work. Okay, so maybe we can, do I have no superpowers here? No? Okay. Oh, can I control those? Oh, okay. I can't find them. It's gonna be a long night. Okay, well, I'll toss it over to you. So what we thought we'd do to move things along a little bit is pull out the highlights and areas for growth ahead of time so that when we start to go through the graphs, that will make a little bit more sense. So happy to say that our exit outcomes from ELA and all students in all grades, if we look at each grade level in the district, continue to be strong in our benchmark schools that are designated by DESE. Every grade level ranked either first, second, or third, 3 through 10, and are in the top 5% of the state in general. We also continue to see that essay writing continues to be a mark of distinction for the district with a spread of at least 20 percentage points or above for most grade levels. And so we continue to know that the efforts that we're putting in there are working. Also happy to report that we're looking at just grade level data from 22 to 23. There was notable growth for students with disabilities in 3, 4, 5, 7, and 10, and for the high needs subgroups in 3, 4, and 5. And then we talked a little bit last year, and it's in your magical appendix that you can look at later, but I'll allude to, is that the other way that we look at data is to trace the actual cohorts as they move through the different grade levels, and that's especially important in the subgroups. So it's interesting to see, and I'll show you when we get to the slide, that our grade 10 students who took the test this spring were in 6th grade in 2019. And even though we see that dip in 8th grade, we see that all 3 subgroups of all students with disabilities and high needs students are back up to where they were in 2019 for those same percentages. And I'll show you what I mean by that. I will give this a try, Sherry, but okay. Oh, okay. When we think about areas for growth, we still see a general need for more exposure to nonfiction that's not as distinct as last year, and we're hopeful that our new reading program will help remediate that deficit too. We continue to see high needs cohorts struggling a little bit more than the student with disability cohorts on the whole, not all the time. But what we will be looking at tonight specifically for ELA is data points in both our year-to-year subgroup information as well as our cohort data for grade 8 students with disabilities and high needs, and I'll show you why that becomes a focus area for us to dig a little bit deeper on and do some targeted focused remediation. And then I just isolated some of the specific items from the standards that seem to be tricky for our subgroups this year. So this is the graph that shows you, our 3 different subgroups that we look at, or I guess all is not a subgroup, are all in 2 subgroups, and then that new yellow data point of low income. I think that reflects pretty clearly how we are seeing growth in that grade 3 in all 3 areas. I do think this slide's important too. It's just a general reminder. We at the state and everybody talks about our return to pre-pandemic performance, and we look at 2019 as that golden year. It's a good reminder that this test is relatively new, that it was just administered Next Gen MCAS in 2017 for 3 to 8. And as you can see, everybody was getting their sea legs on in 2017 and 18, the state, we were. This happens every time you get a new test release. So I just think it's an interesting point of information. It reminds us that MCAS is certainly worth considering and delving into and looking at the data for, but there's a bigger picture than just the pre-pandemic year and what's happening now. Grade 4, we see that despite a slight dip in all from the grade 4 year 2022 to 2023, we see some nice growth in the students with disabilities and high needs. And grade 5, we see that growing in those 3 areas that we've been tracking too. Grade 6, I think, offers us some new information because we can start to look at cohorts. This is the one that I mentioned to you. These 2019 6th graders are the students who took this test as sophomores this past spring. So I think it's interesting to not only look at, we had a bit of a dip in all students and students with disabilities, high needs was sort of the same, for looking just 7th grade one year to 7th grade the next, I'm sorry, what year are we in? 6th grade one year to the next. I think it's interesting, worth pointing out, if we look at that 90, 67, and 55, when these kids tested this spring, you'll see it later when we look at the 10th grade slide, their percentage points respectively were 89, 63, and 54. And so that's an interesting also way of looking at pre-pandemic performance, right? Two different ways of considering our data. Similarly, when we see the students with disabilities and cohort data went up a little bit here, I think it's worth noting too that this group is the group, these 7th graders in 2019, the group that took the test in 2022 for the graduation competency determination for the diploma. And those numbers, if we see 90, 62, and 42, interestingly became 91, 63, and 43 when they were 10th graders. So it's interesting to track just not what's happening in the same grade every year, but what's happening with a particular cohort for sort of more information in a particular crew. And, when we need to panic and when we don't. Like now I'm panicking because I can't make it go. Oh, that's not left, that is, okay. Here's where, if I just looked at this data, I would say, oh, it went up a point in all, and it sort of stayed the same-ish in students with disabilities. High needs did stay the same. Students with disabilities is down a percentage point. It's hard to tell because of the low-income number sort of fuzzes out where we are. But, and these are the kiddos in 2019 who took the test, which was a full test for 10th graders in 2021. Someone argued that it was a little bit easier that year. I think that might be true. But still, they bounced up from their 83, 44, 35 to 91, 49, 41 in 2021 in their graduation year. I mean, their year that would count toward graduation. But I still want to look more closely, because when we look at those total percentages, these total numbers of meeting and exceeding proficient are low. They're our lowest for ELA. And when I look at the cohort data, it went down most drastically. 11 points in students with disabilities from 7th to 8th, that same group that I'm tracing, and 11 points for high needs. So that in addition to the item analyses that we do where we're going through and looking at actual test questions, how we did, comparatively to the state, that I see more dips below the state level in those subgroups, and even one on the whole all. Granted, it was 1%, and it was a question on poetic structure, but still, it makes us look a little bit more deeply. So that's why I'm saying, you could get lulled into thinking something at just looking at the data one way. Are we 10? Okay. So grade 10 ELA, I think the graph in your appendix shows this a little bit better. Down 2 percentage points from 91 to 89, we'll take it. What this graph doesn't show is a really nice bounce up in the exceeding expectations range from 25% last year to 41% this year, which was a nice bump. Something certainly be proud of. All of this is work to be proud of. And then we can look at, let's see. Yeah, I don't need to compare who the 10th graders are because they are they. Okay, so these next few slides just break it down to the actual, these are just the kids who were tested this year against the state. And again, we always want to see those, clear margins from our proficiency data, which is the combination of meeting and exceeding always, and then how it breaks down across all students for each grade level. And then this is with our students with disabilities, and especially that grade 8 line. This is where, I'm starting to see if I dig a little deeper and don't just look at the all number, right, that's something I want to be looking at. And same with high needs, that's my lowest number in the left-hand column and my highest number in the right-hand column. And that's going to be where we need to pay some attention. So when we talk about next steps at the elementary level, we are talking about, obviously interreading is the biggie, K-5. We're also continuing to refine our MTSS efficacy. We are looking at making sure for the first time this year that we have regular data meetings for all 4 elementary schools built into the schedule, which is pretty awesome. That allows us to get on the same page with much more, it's much easier than sort of catch as catch can information between reading specialists and teams. We have our iReady screener, as well as the MyPath lessons that target individual areas of challenge, right, because it's adaptive. We're having some great results from Monica Matthews, our elementary writing specialist, who's continuing to work with each grade level each year to make sure that we're getting our common writing across the curriculum tasks and working closely with Andy Hoyt and Michelle too to see where we can make those dovetail with their content area standards as well as the new reading program. And then she's also doing a lot of work with the consistent implementation of empowering writers for narrative, expository, and opinion writing at the elementary levels. Of course, we need to make time and make a focus of collaborating with reading specialists, special educators, interventionists, and making sure that everybody is working with the same information as far as what areas for improvement we need. And when we're working in that team, we're able to focus more closely on specific elementary schools and what they need, because that's not always the same. Okay. For the middle school, we're going to be working on the MTSS model and ways to think about the schedule and expanding those opportunities, our Tier 2 interventions. We have started instituting data meetings there. I won't say they're regular yet, but we had 2 last year, and then we just had 1 at a department meeting because it is tricky to find time. But just had that a few weeks ago where the reading specialists were able to share preliminary data with the ELA teachers. That's always helpful. And again, that collaboration piece to make sure that we're on target with everybody is having a shared understanding of what needs to be addressed in the curriculum, and that it's not just pockets of people working with singular information. Still trying to expand opportunities for our writing specialists. She just also picked up another section of Reading Lab and sometimes is supporting classes in other ways because she's also special education certified, English certified, and ELL. So it's been hard to clear her for what we need her for, but that's, I guess, maybe a nice problem to have. And at both middle and high, we're continuing our vertical articulation of the grammar program. We're finishing out that at 7th grade at the middle and starting with 11th at the high school. The ones under have been built. And then we continue our work expanding literature circles throughout middle and high so that we can up student engagement with sort of like a genuine appeal to their interest in reading, as well as it gives us a really excellent way of diversifying the voices that they hear and understanding perspectives, and also upping that skill for what is part of the standards that are addressed. At the high school, we're committed to maintaining the robust writing program that we know is paying off again and again. We need to continue targeting reading selections with a representative range of text complexity. It's a tricky walk to walk sometimes because you definitely need to meet students where they're at, but you also, if you're going to expect them to perform on a grade level state assessment, they need to be exposed to grade level texts. Again, that collaboration with all team members, our reading specialist at the high school and special educators. Like I said, our grammar program and our lit circles is also an initiative that we're continuing all across secondary. Did I forget anything? I think that's the end of, look, it's already math time.
Are we doing questions in the middle or? Do you have any question? Okay.
Do you have to do ELA now?
I have an ELA question.
Great.
It's actually honestly more of a history social studies question, so you can tell where I'm going with it.
Get Andy on speed dial.
Looking at how there needs to be a lot more informational text reading especially the younger elementary years. I'm wondering how much of the reading program, I know the reading teachers are also the social studies teachers at the elementary level, but how much of the training is sort of shared as you get into the upper levels. I'm just thinking social studies and history often teaches writing a certain way, and English teaches writing a different way. And if everyone sort of has a humanities umbrella and sort of can get on the same strategies with fiction and nonfiction with the two disciplines, I always think it's odd that social studies doesn't have an MCAS.
It's coming.
It's coming, I know, but it's, I think there's a lot of opportunity for collaboration between the
Right.
ELA department and the nonfiction ELA department.
Definitely, and right. And it also usually says like C literacy for some
Yeah.
of their skills in the frameworks. So the work that we're doing, you're right that it's easier, for lack of a better word, at elementary because those teachers are teaching all the disciplines. At the secondary level, we have worked to use the same terminology from the writing program that we've kind of made, it's been institutionalized in the district for a while. There are differences just by nature of the fact that they're forced to write DBQs,
Yeah.
right? That in the secondary, and that starts right in middle
Just
school.
hearing you say you're using the same language in both departments gives me goosebumps.
Yeah, well, I was same-ish. No, it's same as we can be without, there are terms for the DBQ. And it is interesting sometimes too, it's also good for students to learn that you might need to use an although statement in your thesis in history, but in English, that's not necessarily where we're shaping you up to land. So that's okay too, and they end up needing to learn different ways of citing. And but for the most part, when we're talking about what they need to use for their DQ or their DD, their developmental detail, right, or some sort of fact, or DQ for a direct quotation, and they need to analyze, they have A/I, analysis and interpretation, that's common language that they would, in their lead-ins that they need to work on. But even the process can be different. Like there's a lot more time on sort of stacking evidence in a DBQ than we would definitely. We don't do that in English, Tim. No, just kidding. But so those sort of nuances are. Right, exactly. We hate that stuff. But so where we can use the same terminology, and there's a lot of overlap, we definitely do, because agreed that it's a confusing, like, sort of switch to keep a totally different schemata.
Awesome, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
I could go on for hours, but we'll go out for coffee sometime.
Okay, perfect. I'm free that day.
I think this is probably a broad, not for just ELA, but can we compare, do we have the ability to compare against like the top 10 schools in the state? Because we're,
It's
and
currently not publicly available
Okay.
on DART. So on DESI's website, there's a tool called DART,
Yeah.
and they have not yet updated for 2023. So the DESI made clear, particularly during the pandemic and coming off the pandemic, though we were all in the same storm, we weren't in the same ship. And so they were de-emphasizing that comparison to other districts. That said, probably the most valuable comparison is not necessarily to the whole state,
Right.
because of that storm and ship analogy. But DESI does have us compared to comparable districts. There are 11 districts that we're
Yep.
compared to. And Mary alluded to some of that in her intro. We compared quite favorably, 1, 2, or 3 in most cases for ELA, and so each department can share that. But it will be publicly available on DART at some point, and I can share that out with the committee once it's publicly available. Mhm. Yep.
I think you can enter certain schools on the DESI website to compare.
Yeah,
But
it's not
you can only
presented in that
you can only
nice,
do
neat
like
chart
3,
yet,
I
but
think, 3
yeah.
at a time.
But they will eventually publish, like they did last
the
year in
DART.
2022, the 11 districts that were compared to Duxbury, Winchester, and so on. And so it does prepare a nice chart.
So I just had a question. I think it's going to be for everybody. But so we've talked a lot about the achievement gap between students with disabilities and our high need students and then all students. And it looks like the multi-tiered system of supports is doing a good job to try to catch, to kind of lessen that gap over time. And that's for everyone, including the kids with disabilities. Thinking about it though, because there is that gap, those students are going to need to make more progress almost to do that. So is there any looking at the way special ed services are delivered to try to address that, closing that gap, in addition to the multi-tiered system of supports?
So
given the presentation this evening, we have been meeting regularly with particularly Amy Muldoon at the secondary level. So we do feel that at the elementary level, the special educators and the general educators are so closely entwined. It's really secondary that we're focused on building out that relationship and that time and so on. And so we really are focusing in on the fact that every student needs access to a robust tier 1 education. And so that's been really the focus of our conversations. We just met with Amy again this afternoon and continued those conversations. And as I mentioned, tonight you're seeing the averages. With Amy, we pulled actual individual student data and looked at students who are in the CLC. How did they do? In the appendix, there's some item analysis that we really look at for that subgroup, how our students in the CLC, in our small group English, and any students in special education, how are they specifically doing in accessing pieces of the curriculum? And so we're taking it from that angle as well.
That's great. Thank you.
I think it slides 127 to 143 if you'd like to
a lot of
dig into that.
Yeah, appreciate it.
On to mathematics. Thank you. On to mathematics. Hello, David. How are you?
I'm doing great. Nice to see everybody. I'm not sure why Mary looked at me and said, "Did I get everything?" But her brain is like a bulletin board with like tax and the red string, and she's got it all going together. So it's been a fun week talking about this stuff. I'm gonna see if I can figure out the left click. Where am I? Oh, here we are. Find my mouse. All right. Sorry. Yeah, I'll come back to it. Anyway, thanks for having me, guys. Again, we had a good year looking at our data. Overall, about 3/4 of our students meeting and exceeding, which is fantastic. At grades 3 through 5, every subgroup, I think it was grade 3, high needs stayed the same. Every other subgroup went up, and as did all of our students at 3 through 5. So that's fantastic. Again, tying back into the conversation we just had about MTSS and really finally having some formalized plans there that are working and being able to specifically address needs, not kind of, oh, I know this kid needs something. We're really being able to target very specifically what kids need. 7th and 8th grade math performance statewide, we know is an issue. We talked about it very much last year. Those are the two things that jumped out. When I get a little bit further down, I'll talk about that a little bit more. We did a lot to make some adjustments. Grade 7, we were piloting a couple different curriculum last year. Grade 8, we had sort of started piloting the Desmos curriculum. We were kind of shifting in some things. We were trying to work on collapsing some levels together, which again, I'll talk about a little bit down the road. But our grade 7 data looked very strong. And it was nice to see that actually we didn't follow the state trends. We were actually seeing growth in grade 7. And even in grade 8, it was interesting to see that we had great growth for all students in grade 8. Very uniquely, you heard Mary kind of talk about it, and then Katie sort of mentioned it too, that our students with disabilities subgroup, our high needs subgroup, we're really trying to mine in on individual student data and where those students were, and trying to figure out what we need to focus on. That's still definitely an area of focus moving forward for sure. Last year, our grade 8 geometry, we had talked about that a little bit. There were a couple things. There were some COVID decisions with curriculum that affected our scores, but we also talked about the idea that we accelerate students so that, again, when we're thinking about our outcomes, Mary was mentioning grade 10 outcomes. When in math, a lot of times we're thinking about our outcomes for seniors and how many students are actually taking calculus, which we have a remarkably large number of students getting there, and that involves having to accelerate students to middle school. That was affecting our grade 8 scores because they were missing some of the geometry standards from 7th grade that were supposed to have carried forward. We put in a very concerted effort to specifically address those needs. We built out a whole bunch of different modules for kids to work on. In those accelerated courses, the kids that were on grade level in grade 8 were actually doing fine. it was the kids that were accelerated who'd kind of missed that. We were 16.25% above the state on that after being well below last year. So that was great. There was actually 12 questions. And that was one of the things we talked about last year too. We're like, they've really increased the number of geometry questions in that test as well. So that was fantastic sort of point to where we made a switch, and it actually really worked out well for us. Grade 8 expressions and equations. I have a starred email, like many of you probably do, from May of last year from one of my 8th grade teachers that said, can we have a conversation about negative exponents with 8th graders and how much we need to really dig into it? Interestingly enough, looking at the standards, those are two concepts they were talking about, the teachers. They said, where you reach a point of saturation with the students and we know that they kind of get it, but they're not fully there, but we know we're going to see it again in algebra and they'll have it by the time they're sophomores for grade 10. And so they were asking about whether they can move on and trying to make those decisions. Something we said we look at this year. When I got into the MCAS data, those were two questions on that we actually struggled with. So interestingly enough, it's something that the teachers had already pointed out. And then we had another sort of spot with expressions and equations where we were dealing with systems of equations that were some unique situations where there's no solution, and for one of the questions, and another sort of unique situation where, again, students dealing with systems is something that's a little bit complex. So again, trying to determine how much we stay on a topic. And sometimes is it 3, 4, 5 days till everybody gets it? Or when do you move on because you know they're going to see it in 9th grade, 10th grade, and eventually they will get it. And so some of the things that kind of came up that we have issues with in grade 8, the teachers were kind of aware of that. So we'll continue to kind of look at those things. And then again, as we get to grade 10, we did fantastic again, 83%. We've been pretty level for years there. And again, 40% of students with disabilities and 48% of our high needs students achieving and meeting or exceeding. And so I will kind of move quickly through the graphs. You all had this data. So again, as we said, we're seeing all the subgroups. Some of them ticked up a lot, some of them ticked up a little. And one of the things that if you didn't get a chance, and not that you necessarily want more time with this, but interestingly, if you get deep into the appendix, you can see how each group does specifically against the state and the state progress. This is, us against us and our own subgroups. And some of that data is compelling as well to look at and go, oh, wow, as a state. And again, I know the state's a different boat, as Katie had said, but it is nice to see how our students are performing against the state. We had a tick down here in grade 6, again, with students with disabilities and high needs. And then grade 7, which was a clear area of concern last year, we saw a ticking up. And then grade 8, which was an area of concern last year. And we were kind of excited to at least have seen some growth last year. And we're kind of like, oh yeah, hopefully next year we're doing these things. And as you can see, we clearly had an impact on all students, but there's something going on here that we definitely need to continue to look at and figure out. And that's going to be our charge for the coming months. And then again, grade 10, pretty consistent and steady. And again, the difference here, when some things to kind of think about, just when we talk about the number of students that are in these groups, this here is probably the difference of 1 or 2 students. Would be the difference of 2 students in this group versus in a 3rd, 4th, or 5th grade where we have higher numbers of students with disabilities per each grade level. They have a sort of one student has a smaller impact when we're just talking about looking at a percentage. So just something to kind of think about as we move forward there. What I wanted to kind of highlight here, last year, this was something that sort of jumped out. We were concerned about sort of grade 7 and grade 8 in particular last year, in that there was a major dip in grade 7 and grade 8 in terms of all students meeting and exceeding. And we still see a dip, but one of the things, so if we're trying to compare one year to the other, last year we fell off and we were, the difference here is 27 points this year. Last year it was 18 points. And then the difference between grade 7 was 25 last year, and now it's 30. So we had a consistent sort of difference between grade 3, 4, 5 in the state, and then grade 10 in the state. And that sort of fell in that 30-ish point range. And so we were concerned the grade 7 and 8 weren't there. They've kind of moved into those ranges. That holds true for special ed and for high needs, except for, again, that grade 8 cohort that we're kind of doing a deep dive on. We definitely saw, again, grade 7s most certainly jumped up. And so then as we think about some of our next steps, at the elementary level, again, it's wonderful that we got this all into place last year, but just to see how the school year started this year was remarkable in terms of MTSS, and things started right away. We started with groups. We have iReady data from last year. We didn't have to wait. Within week 1, before the diagnostic had even started, they were pulling groups from kids from last year and already trying to get in there and work. There was no lost time for kids. So I would say that we've probably picked up a month of time and work, especially early on in the year when we started to think about kids falling behind. We've picked up a lot of time there, and we just have structures that are more sound. People know who to talk to. They know what data to pull, what data to talk about from the start of the year. So it's been a remarkable improvement just to open up the year. We're excited to see how things continue to improve throughout the year. We're also in year 2 of using iReady and MyPath digital learning tool. I think one of the nice things is we're really, now that we're through that first year, right? We had to train everybody last year. At this point, people had heard of it. They didn't know what they were doing. People understand. They understand what MyPath is. They understand that they're trying to get their students on for 45 minutes a week for 3 lessons and trying to pass 3 lessons. They understand that our students who have gaps to fill theoretically could use more time either on MyPath or in face-to-face. We always want face-to-face work first. But if we can get face-to-face and the 45 minutes, we're kind of trying to close those gaps, not just kind of keep the gap the same. And that's one of the things that we're trying to do to address that. The math intervention team is now having dedicated time. They met with the math specialist and myself to start off the year with a rep from iReady to kind of talk about analyzing data and to look a little bit deeper into how we can use data and how we can monitor students a little bit more in between the diagnostics that happen beginning, middle, and end of year, and actually use consistent data to move kids in and out, and not just on gut feel or, oh, they got this, but using the program to our advantage. So that's fantastic. On top of that, math intervention team is also working with each other to help sort of develop high quality or compare, use, share high quality materials that they already have to make sure everyone sort of has a similar bank of materials to go to across all 4 schools. There's new PLC time at the elementary schools, and thank you to the principals if anyone's at home still watching. That's going to be a fantastic use of time for our instruction with our teachers, right? When we start thinking about places that need, we start doing the MCAS analysis, and yeah, our item analysis looks great, and our numbers are really high in 3, 4, and 5 in terms of how we did. We can always do better. There's always something to talk about. And so that PLC time gives an actual moment when a math specialist can sit down with a team of grade 3, 4, 5 teachers and talk about a unit or talk about an idea and really plan out best practices for teaching that. Because our elementary teachers are fantastic, but not everyone is a math teacher per se. So getting some strategies in that sort of coaching model in that setup is great. So that's something new that I think could go under the radar, but I think will have a big impact. And then obviously just the continuation of the math coaching model. This is a multi-year process, but getting that sort of tier 1 instruction, the focus on math workshop model, but then getting the math specialists who did a lot of professional development last year for coaching staff, getting them paired up with staff and helping them, again, deliver lessons. And again, that's already started, right? We've already have specialists that are embedding themselves in classrooms for multiple weeks with teachers, helping them plan and approach some of this stuff from iReady, but some of the MCAS targets as well are already sort of being addressed. At the secondary level for next steps, again, we've already sat down to discuss areas of weakness At the high school, we'll be doing that at the middle school and start talking about best practices. Some of the things we always need to consider are our geometry standards. We'll have students who end up repeating Algebra 1 and may not take geometry before the 10th grade MCAS. And so that's okay because they need the algebra base first and foremost to get through everything they need. But are there specific geometry skills that we can target in their review as we lead up? So we've already sort of had those meetings to discuss those best practices, and we'll be continuing our professional development with we've been focusing on perseverance and growth, and that really ties back into the MCAS, especially those multi-step problems where kids have to write and really think about their own thinking and then sort of articulate it. At the middle school, we've made some great progress, I think, in terms of iReady and MyPath. So we're using it in all of 6th grade, all of Math 7, and all of Math 8. We piloted Math 7 and Math 8 last year, sort of towards the second half of the year, and just dipped our toe into the MyPath piece. Grade 6 was a much fuller year-long pilot. But everyone's we've already discussed sort of hitting MyPath goals, what that'll look like, how they can implement it into their classroom across all 3 grades. So that's huge. I'm very excited about that. I think that's going to give our students a lot of opportunities for individual growth. We've also shifted a little bit our intervention model. So we've had more push-in. We had all pullouts into math lab classes, and we had restructured strategically the math lab courses, and we're still doing this. So they were sort of spaced across the day. So we could sort of move kids off of a study into a math lab if possible. And so that was great, and it allowed us to have as close to sort of an elementary-ish model as you could in a middle school, considering the scheduling constraints. But it also meant that a kid did not have to stay in math lab because they were stuck in math lab. There was no place for them to go, or if we realized that someone a month or 2 into school needed to move in, it gave us the flexibility to do that. So that's great. That scheduling piece, working with Mr. Smith to help make that happen, has been a boon for us, but also, again, providing more of the push-in because not all students can get, they have other services maybe that sort of that schedule's tight. I know we've all talked about this before. So we're trying to address, if we can't get a student into math lab, maybe we can still provide some supports another way. So we've done that. We combined our Math 8 and Math 8 with algebra courses into just one new course. It's called Math 8. It is the grade level 8th grade course, with a goal that everyone will sort of be getting that same curriculum and everyone will have access to the full grade level, grade 8 curriculum. We're continuing to refine our use of Desmos, which we mainly kind of put in for student engagement and problem solving and mathematical practices. And so we've seen with any curriculum, there's always a multi-year sort of tweak and you have to figure things out. One of the big things that I've seen some of the 8th grade teachers come back with this year is this idea that we need sort of these structured notebooks that sort of play off of this idea that Desmos is great in terms of engaging students in sort of online activities and everyone in the class can be participating at the same time, but we were still needing some rote work and just some drill work at certain times. Like you need that for math at times, right? It can't just all be about, do you understand it? Because a lot of times kids understand in the moment, they understand what you're saying, they can practice something, they understand it, but they need to go home and practice and come back the next day. And so trying to strike that balance and figure that out. And so the teachers have put a lot of effort already and will continue to do that. And we know, Katie mentioned earlier that there'll be some additional Title I interventions at HMS this year. And then at the high school, hopefully we'll be able to continue the Algebra 1 support class that we have after school for students, the MCAS support class that we host for our sophomores. We do individually tutor students who do not pass the 10th grade MCAS on the first time to get them through. And then we're using the use of Alex, which is a similar, not same, but similar sort of thing to MyPath. We've been using that at the high school for quite a while in Algebra 1. And then I met with some of the special education teachers as well to help them sort of bring that into their special education, their small group special education classes this year. So it's a lot of next steps, but we got a lot going on. We put a lot into place last year and a lot of it's carrying over and we stuck our toe in last year. A lot of things we're kind of jumping into a little bit more this year. So I'm excited to see where it goes. Questions? Okay.
That's not a question, it's a comment. But we all get very excited by all this great data. Is it ever an issue that a kid in Hingham doesn't graduate because he doesn't pass the MCAS?
Has not been an issue yet.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
Good, excellent to hear, because the interventions are so good.
In my 22 years, no.
Yeah. Amazing.
We've got to be, yeah, it's been.
Very few schools say that, school systems say that.
Well, it's been a lot of hard work by a lot of people and a lot of students. You know, it's not easy to be in a position where you didn't pass it the first time through and then to really have to do a lot of extra work to commit to it. So that's I don't, you know, it's on the student, it's on the teachers and the students together to really help any student that is in that position.
I guess it's more just a comment. I mean, it's really great to see all this work with the 3 different levels, and I just really appreciate specifically the middle school and how you really dug into those specific areas.
Trying.
I see it with my middle schooler. I've seen the progress, and just thank you.
Welcome.
Matt. So this, I guess, is a question for math, but maybe more broadly. I see definitely the value of iReady and MyPath individualizing. You alluded to it a little bit, sort of the trade-off of face-to-face learning from that. I'm just trying to get a handle on the increase in time spent doing these tools.
Yep.
I don't know, comparative, like to 5 years ago. Is it about the same and this is a different tool than we used before? Is it much more, but we see the value of it?
So I'll answer your question 2 ways. My initial face-to-face comment was that given the opportunity to have a student work with an interventionist or work on iReady, they should work with the interventionist whenever possible. Right? Working with a person is always best. iReady will reach that themselves. So to that end, especially at the elementary level, we have our neediest students working with interventionists the most, which means they're doing iReady. There's just less time for them to do that individualized path. The interventionist knows what the individualized path should kind of be, so they're working on them. But that being said, to close the gap, which if they can do all that time with the interventionist and then also spend the extra, still hit their sort of 45 to 50-minute mark, hopefully that will help them close the gap, not keep the gap the same going forward. So that was that idea. Your second point is
just on the 45-minute. Is that you probably said this, but is that
in a
week? A 6 day or a 1 week?
Yeah. And I would also say that in math, that computer-assisted instruction that iReady would be part of has a very strong research base in math, because you're just providing that at practice and they're getting immediate feedback of whether the answer is correct or wrong. So that, what Dave was saying, that matched small group instruction matched with that practice that students are getting on that computer-assisted instruction, together, that's the magic formula. Obviously, we want to emphasize the in-person, because that's always going to be when kids are getting direct instruction to meet their immediate needs. But then you provide that little extra practice, which can be on a piece of paper, but the kids are not getting that immediate feedback that the computer is giving you to say that's correct or that's wrong. And then they'll give you a little bit of a tutorial about what your mistake was immediately. And so it's the mixture of the two that make the magic, really make the progress that students need. All students, including our students with disability. That's what we need, is that small group instruction with that practice. And it also is very important as a way to accelerate learning for kids who are ready to move a little further. iReady is personalized so that it allows kids to move further if they're ready.
And to Dr. Adams' point too, we're not just sort of leaving the kids to the behest of the computer. One of the things I was excited about with being sort of in year 2 and talking about best practices now with the teachers, we talked about, and the specialists sort of put this message out there. End of the week, let's talk about sort of looking at a usage report, following your students in my path, and oh, they have a little flag here. That means you as a teacher need to actually intervene.
Yep.
They've hit a rut. So we're trying to identify some ways to sort of blend it. Okay. To your other question, yeah, there's a concern for sure that the more time you spend here in one pool, you're taking away from that direct instruction. There's always, I don't want to say there's always time, right? That's all we ever talk about. We never have enough time in school to do the things we want to do. But that's something that was part of the conversation with the middle school in particular. As the students get older, the diagnostic itself takes 6 or 7 days of instruction away by the time you do the 3 diagnostics, then the 45 minutes a week. And so we've been talking about sort of trying to balance when's a good time for it. Do you have a 15-minute or a 20-minute quiz one day? Could they do already in that space afterwards? And then maybe one of their assignments is a homework assignment, and trying to find the right way through. So again, the research on it is strong, but we'll have our own sort of feelings and feedback. I think it's going to take us a couple years to really know how we feel about it for sure. You're welcome. Did you still have a question?
Actually might be more for Katie. I know there was a cohort of students that graduated last year that we were worried about passing, and they were just exempt from passing the MCAS.
Yes. Yeah. So during COVID, there were some exemptions, particularly for science. The exemptions were later than math and ELA.
For science. For math, they had a different set of expectations that they had to meet. But they still took the MCAS and met those expectations.
This is only the second year of high school science MCAS being back in action. So.
And the expectations were not wildly different. They were different. They were a little bit lower, but they were not wildly lower in math, at least.
I don't know if I can ask a question, but I saw that ELA is doing iReady and math is doing iReady. And how is that working out in terms of doing an hour and a half of iReady in the school week?
It's different because it's different across different grade levels in terms of implementation and how it's being used. I think 3, 4, 5 is the only place where it's being used for ELA and math and hitting that hour and a half a week.
Yeah. So it's only 3 through 5 that's being.
It is. We use Alexia for independent practice case of their centers.
So they still have a half an hour.
Ish. Yeah.
Ish.
It's not as defined as
But it's also not always the same day. Right? It could, I mean, and to see the part of the training last year was really trying to just figure out how do you schedule this for everybody, and you have your students that are sort of split into maybe 4 different intervention groups, and some need acceleration and some need a heavy level of intervention. How do you balance that out? That took a lot of coordination. But in that, and part of the math workshop model as well that we're doing, it's okay, well, you're going to have kids doing 3 or 4 different things all at the same time, and then they'll be rotating. And so it's sort of blended into that. It's not the whole class go grab an iPad or a computer and sit down together, and this is now your my path time. That's sort of suffocating. I think we all would think. There may be days when that has, right? There's always days, and there'll always be a day when a kid comes home and says, oh my gosh, I spent 30, or all the kids, so they'll exaggerate. I spent 2 hours on my pad today, but that's not necessarily the case.
Thank you. We shift to science. One time, we're going to let science go first.
Next time.
Maybe next year we'll make sure.
Maybe
science
next year.
goes first.
That would be great. So it's this, oh, you already moved it for me. Thank you. So thank you guys for letting me present. I did want to start out by just talking about some of the variations and how the science MCAS has been administered over the last few years. It's been a little bit different. So in 2019, all subject areas, grade 5, grade 8, and the high school biology had a full test. However, in 2019, grade 5 and grade 8, that was their first year with the next generation science MCAS, and high school biology was still legacy. 2020, no test. 2021 was actually only a half test for grades 5 and 8, and it was a full test in high school biology, but they were still on the legacy test. Finally, 2022 was a full test in grade 5, 8, and high school. In high school, that was our first year of our next generation science test. So that's actually the first year we can start comparing for the high school biology. And then last year, 2023, was a full test for all grades 5, 8, and high school. Also keep in mind that grade 5 and 8 MCAS is cumulative, so students are tested on standards covered in grades 3, 4, and 5 on the 5th grade MCAS, and on the 8th grade MCAS, students are covered in content that's taught in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. So I did want to go over some overall conclusions that we saw with science. So overall statewide, we saw that science results were relatively unchanged. However, we did see some slight decreases noted again statewide. Hingham Public School students, 80% of 5th grade students were meeting or exceeding expectations. Our 8th grade, 62% were meeting and exceeding, and our high school biology at 77%. We did just implement last year the new open SciEd curriculum. This new open SciEd curriculum is aligned with actually the new science, technology, and engineering test that's actually going to be starting with the pilot this year and then moving on with full expansion in 2026. So we're just going to kind of keep that in mind when we look at some of the 8th grade standards. Across all grade levels, students seem to continue to excel at describing and explaining scientific concepts. And again, we still see some struggle with analyzing models and making arguments from evidence. So this is just a quick update for grade 5 and grade 8 MCAS. So the Department of Elementary and Second Education has come up with a new science, technology, and engineering test for grades 5 and 8. And they're calling it performance tasks or a performance test. And they're hoping that these tasks have students focus on real life scenarios. And it's supposed to align with the new high quality curriculum, which DESE and Ed Reports has concluded that open SciEd is one of the high quality curriculum that we're able to use. And it is something that we've been using in grades 6, 7, and 8. So just to give you an idea, the expanded pilot actually starts this spring. Hingham was not chosen to be part of this pilot for this year. Next year, spring 2025, everybody will do the statewide field test, and then they anticipate the new testing starting in 2026. So this upcoming MCAS is technically the last of the next generation, even though the next generation science MCAS only started in 2019. So we're just moving right along.
On your toes.
Yes, absolutely. So I did include, do you want to just keep clicking for me? Awesome. Just a couple of example questions of the new science, technology, and engineering test. So the new test is actually going to consist of 3 different elements: an illustrated storyline, so kind of a scenario so students can get involved. It's usually about a real life phenomena or something happening. This is about a construction site and some erosion. This is a 5th grade example. All the tests are going to have some type of interactive simulation where students are actually going to conduct experiments, make observations, and try to solve a problem. They're also including some series of constructed response items. These could be any variety of multiple choice, multiple selection, or some type of technology enhanced question that are going to align to the science practices. So this is grade 5 example. And if you go to the next slide, this is a grade 8 example, just to kind of give you an idea of what the new test will be coming out. And again, we won't be doing this test this year because we weren't picked for this year's pilot, but next year for 2025, we'll be in this. And again, just going through again that open SciEd is considered actually one of the only curriculum that is meeting and exceeding expectations. And this is the program that we started last year in grades 6, 7, and 8. So I'll quickly go through the subgroup data. So this is grade 5 MCAS. Again, 80% of our students earned a score of meeting and exceeding. On some of the appendix we have compared to the state, with 47% of our students with disabilities earning a meeting and exceeding, 53% of our high needs, and 40% of our low income. All students in grade 5 performed at or above the state on all 41 out of 41 questions. The next subgroup, which has been a particular focus for most areas, is our grade 8. Again, please keep in mind that we just began implementing the new open SciEd curriculum that aligns with the new science, technology, and engineering performance task test. And again, that is something that's going to be piloted statewide in 2025. So our current curriculum is aligned to the new state test that will be coming up. We had 62% of our students meeting or exceeding expectations, 10% of our students with disabilities, 14% of our high need, and 17% of our low income. This is just a data analysis of some of the test questions, just so you can see how students performed compared to the state. All of our students in grade 8 with the 41 out of 41 test questions performed at or above the state level. We did see a decrease in students' performance in other subgroups, with our students with the disabilities performing 28 out of 41 test questions and high needs at 25 out of 41. These are just some examples. And again, I just wanted to point out that it's important to note that the grade 8 science MCAS is on content taught in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. So it's not necessarily just content that they learn in 6th grade or 7th grade or 8th grade. And there's a lot of content standards, and every year they pick 41 of them. So it's kind of interesting to see. Last year, a lot of the content that students had trouble with was life science, and life science is not a concept last year that was taught in 8th grade. So it would have been something that they learned in 7th grade. So just showing how the year kind of takes place. And I just wanted to show you just some different types of questions. This is memorization of cellular respiration. So they needed to know the equation for cellular respiration. And one more, this is just multiple part matching. Again, and this is genetics. So something that they would have learned in a grade that was in 8th grade. This is 10th grade science. This particular graph, you're only able to pull data from 10th graders. Just keep in mind that we usually have both 9th and 10th graders taking our high school biology MCAS. As you can see, 77% of our students, in this case it's 78 because this was only grouping our 10th graders, but when we grouped our 9th and 10th graders, 77% of our students were meeting or exceeding expectations, 27% of our students with disabilities, 39% of our high needs, and 50% of our low income were meeting or exceeding expectations. Again, oops, all right. We had some graphs showing the performance at or above the state. Again, we scored 42 out of 42 test questions for high school biology. And then also looking at some of the test questions that's in the appendix, you're able to see kind of some of the standards that some of the students might have struggled with. Moving on, this is just the data from the graph. So again, 80% of our 5th grade, 62% of our 8th grade, and 77% of our high school biology was meeting and exceeding for all students. Students with disabilities, 47, 10, and 27, exact from the graphs. And last but not least, high needs, 53, 14, and 39. So we can move on to next steps. Oh, they're still out of order. There they are. So those are just some of the example questions. And we have a bunch more in the appendix. All, 100 of those slides. They're there somewhere. So our major goals for all grade levels is to make sure all students are meeting or exceeding expectations. At our elementary level, we are going to continue, we kind of grouped into what we're working on and what we're going to continue to focus, and then some long-term goals. So we hope to, or we will be continuing to review MCAS concepts in our grade 5 field science that happens at all elementary schools. We're going to continue to model experimental design and extend engineering design in field science. And that's going to be particularly important when 5th grade moves to that new science, technology, and engineering assessment starting in 2025 and 2026. We're going to continue to review and assist 5th grade teachers with reviewing 3rd and 4th grade concepts, because again, 5th grade MCAS is on concepts taught in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. We're going to continue to work with the reading specialist and Monica Matthews, who is the writing specialist, to help work on the science scope and sequence so that we can specifically align our scope and sequence with the reading. So what they're reading in reading can impact science. We also hope to increase emphasis on informational text related to the new reading pilot in grades, or program, excuse me, in grades 5 through 8. Or K through 5. Some of the long-term goals, with the new science, technology, and engineering assessment, we need to start exploring claim evidence reasoning for scientific writing, because a lot of the performance tasks ask students to use evidence to create some type of reasoning or explanation. So that's going to be really important. We need to continue to explore curriculum that includes experimental design and engineering design. We'd love to include some STEM curriculum in some of the makerspace classes at some of the schools. And over time, we'd love to develop and institute a grade level common assessment for each unit in grades 3, 4, and 5. At the secondary level, we're going to continue to implement, specifically at the middle school, the open SciEd curriculum in grades 6th, 7th, and 8th. Again, this curriculum increases emphasis on data analysis practices because students are actually creating their own data, creating their own data tables, creating their own experiments in order to test those. And again, this will help increase evidence to support claims. And these practices are what's going to be explicitly tested in the new state test that's coming out in 2025. We're also going to implement a formal MCAS review in order to review and reinforce concepts that were explored and taught in grades 6th, 7th, and 8th, and teach some test-taking strategies in order for students to be successful in the grade 8 science, technology, and engineering MCAS. At the high school, we're going to implement an MCAS review for students identified as needing additional support before taking the biology MCAS in June. This will be determined by the performance on their mid-year exams. And just a note, all 9th graders this year and a handful of 10th graders will be taking the biology MCAS in June. And we're going to continue emphasizing determining evidence to support claims and continue to work on claim evidence reasoning to write scientific conclusions. And this is our appendix. It has a variety of additional MCAS data, including graphs tables showing achievements compared to the state and overall state data trends in all of our subject areas, ELA, math, and science. Thank you.
I have one question. Thank you for this.
Absolutely.
Presentation. I'm going to pick on one grade, grade 8. So they're starting the open
SciEd, yep.
curriculum this year.
They started piloting it last year. So last year, each grade implemented 2 full units.
So when those 8th graders have the MCAS this year, that's the old, well, like
it's still the old. It is still the 2019.
How will that impact them being related to for that type of test with it?
So that's why we're going to implement kind of the overall review in grade 8, just to make sure that they're ready for the old test, even though 2019 wasn't that old. Just because they'll still be doing the same 2019 next generation MCAS this year. The pilot, it moves off next year in 2025 when they're 9th graders.
Based on 6th, 7th, and 8th. Okay.
Yep, so we're going to be implementing a review to review all concepts in 6th, 7th, and 8th, and then teach them some strategies in order to answer some of those next generation questions. I was also told that they may be implementing some additional performance tasks in this new one, and I don't know how that's going to be scored, but they are going to try to make, not simulation as much as the new science, technology, and engineering, but they're trying to move away from the rote memorization type questions and move towards science practices and testing science practices.
Thank you.
I was, it was sort of very clear from the math and English ELA presentation, some of the interventions for the kids who have already failed the MCAS, especially the 10th grade or 9th grade in sciences case. What type of interventions happen for those? It looks like almost 25% of kids with disabilities initially fail.
Yeah, so with science, the numbers are a little bit different. So we actually had 3 students that didn't meet their CD status or their graduation requirement. So for those students, they actually work individually with me. And I do the MCAS review with them. And that actually happens. It's a little bit different. Math and ELA have their retakes in November, is that correct? Science, we only have 1 retake in February. So those individual students work with me. And then by that time, we should have the mid-year exams for this current 9th/10th grade, because we have a cohort of both taking the bio MCAS this year that we can identify and start an MCAS review before that MCAS in June. The bio MCAS is only 1 year worth of content, which makes it not easier, but just less overwhelming standards-wise.
Thank you.
All right,
much.
thanks.
Thank you.
That's really great presentation. Thank you, everyone. I know that's a lot of work putting that together, so thank you. All right, 9.3. Ready to move on? This is to consider the Massachusetts Association of School Committee resolutions and act as appropriate. So we have, I think, 8 resolutions to go through. Ally is going to be our delegate to the conference, to vote, assuming we accept these resolutions as proposed. Ally will go and vote on behalf of the Hingham School Committee. So just, these are rather long resolutions, so I think we could just state the number, the title of it, what school committee sponsored it, and then maybe read the resolution piece of it, because I think that summarizes everything. And then for each one, we'll individually make a motion and second, and then approve or not the resolution.
Now, if you don't want to do it either.
Huh?
Okay, never mind.
Okay.
I have them all here if they need the.
All right, so I think.
75-page presentation.
Please, right? You could, if you could.
Should we just go to the motions?
Do you do the first one? Okay, you're first.
Resolution 1 is full stable funding for MECO,
Yes.
sponsored by
Sorry.
Arlington School Committee, and it essentially is asking for the governor and legislature to create stable funding structure to support MECO and its partner districts that fully funds the support provided by MECO and cost of providing services delivered by MECO's partner districts.
Awesome. All right. Do you want to read the just therefore be it resolved piece, and then that's the part we'll vote on?
Oh, do I have to read it like I basically did? That's what I.
Yeah,
I have to-
all right, you summarized
I have
it, yes, okay.
Therefore,
Nope.
be it resolved that the Massachusetts Association of School Committees calls upon the governor and the legislature to create a stable funding structure to support MECO and its partner districts that fully funds the support provided by MECO and the cost of providing services delivered by MECO's partner districts.
Awesome. Thank you.
Sorry.
Do you want to make the motion?
I can, sure. Okay, so this is number 1. I will make a motion to support. I'll make a motion to support resolution number 1 as proposed by the MASC Board of Directors related to full stable funding for MECO.
I will second.
All right, all those in favor? Aye. All right, great, thank you. All right, Ally, I think you're 2 and 3?
Yes. Okay, so resolution number 2 is regarding investigations and recommendations for transportation bidding procedures. It was brought forth by Southeastern Vocational Technical School Committee, and basically just wants to look into the procedures for bidding for transportation services. And therefore be it resolved that the MA Association of School Committees prevail upon the Office of the State Auditor to investigate the bidding practices of school transportation providers and to present such findings and recommendations as may be necessary to contain costs and make more efficient transportation services available for public schools.
I will make a motion to support resolution number 2 as proposed by the MASC Board of Directors related to investigations and recommendations for transportation bidding procedures.
I will second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, great. Number 3 is also Ally, right?
It is, and this is about regional transportation sponsored by the Hampton-Wilbraham Regional School Committee. So this one is about regional school districts, so it doesn't particularly relate to us, but we can read it and see if we think it's still worth supporting. It's also about transportation, just about students that are further than 1.5 miles. And if for regional school districts where they're not getting reimbursement from the state, they can charge a fee for that transportation or have students opt out of that transportation. So therefore, oh, this is a long one, sorry. Therefore, it be resolved that in such case where a pupil resides greater than 1.5 miles from the school of attendance measured by a commonly traveled route, and the Commonwealth reimbursement does not fully cover the amounts expended for such transportation, the pupils may opt out of such transportation or may charge a fee that in aggregate may not exceed the differential between the amounts expended for furnishing transportation and the Commonwealth reimbursement. Be it further resolved that MASC encourage the legislation to modify Mass General Law, Title 12, Chapter 71, Section 16C, with the aforementioned proposed language or alternative and remove the period to provide regional districts the ability, if so desired, to charge a transportation fee that in aggregate cannot exceed the differential between the Commonwealth reimbursement and the regional school district transportation expense for any pupil that resides greater than 1.5 miles from the school of attendance measured by a commonly traveled route. pupils may opt out of transportation and not be subject to a transportation fee.
Thank you.
Try to make that briefer next
I
time.
know. Would you like to, yeah, rephrase that for the?
Any discussion on this one? Just, is anyone opposed to not supporting it since we are not a regional, but, okay, all right. Can you make a motion?
I will make a motion to support resolution number 3 as proposed by the MSC Board of Directors related to regional transportation.
Oh, second.
Oh,
Sorry.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, great. Give him that job.
Number 4. Diversity, equity, and inclusion. It basically says that the MASC recommends that all districts adopt the position of DEI coordinator to work towards an anti-racist school system. They have all the reasonings there, but we're pretty familiar with the reasonings. We've discussed them at this committee. It seems pretty moderate because it doesn't require it. It's a recommendation, and it doesn't require it to be a director level position, like a lot of districts. I know we've been having sort of that ongoing discussion. It just requires it to be a full-time coordinator position. And it's a recommendation.
So I logged on to the MASC lunch where they went through all these resolutions, and just a couple of things. One of the chairs of Division 10 that brought this forward said that there's a potential amendment because people felt like it was kind of an unfunded mandate, sort of. So so they might amend it to make it more of like just a dedicated resource, so not necessarily somebody who is just DEI, but in addition to that, so that's coming. And then the other thing somebody brought up on the call, and I would support this too, is that the DEI would not just be anti-racism, but also include people with disabilities and transgender and LGBTQ and that.
That is included in the reasosoning that I skipped over.
Yeah, right. Yeah. But they may amend it. So good luck.
Okay. So are we empowering Ally to roll with the amendments?
Are you solving that with the amendments?
No.
All right, do you want to make a motion?
I will make a motion to support resolution number 4 as proposed by the MASC Board of Directors related to diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Including any amendments?
Including any amendments made on the floor at the conference.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, great. Number 5.
Number 5 involves the MSBA, which we're familiar with here. There are 3 parts to this one. For anyone who doesn't know this, the MSBA is a state program that helps schools with capital projects, and it's funded by 1 penny of the state sales tax. So there are 3 parts, and all calling on MASC to ask the legislature to remove the $800,000 cap on MSBA funding. The feeling is that it's not keeping up with demand. Also to reinstate the MSBA Accelerated Repair Program for 2024 that funds major capital repair projects, the roofs, windows, boilers, things like that. And we took advantage of that for the PRS for the windows. So it was paused in 2023 because there were supply chain issues and bids were coming in over. So it was to give a little more space for the core program that builds new school buildings instead of doing that. So this would ask them to reinstate it. And then the third part of it is to allow public preschools to participate in both the Accelerated Repair Program and the core program. This was brought forward by the Wachusett Regional School District, and they have a standalone preschool, which is why they're interested in this. But their point, and I kind of agree with it, is that public schools are responsible for educating preschoolers too, so they should have access to these resources. So, so therefore be it resolved that the Massachusetts Association of School Committees calls upon the Massachusetts Legislature to amend MGL Chapter 70B, Section 7 by removing the $800,000 cap.
I think it's million.
$800. It's a long name. $800 million cap. And be it further resolved that the Massachusetts Association of School Committees calls upon the Massachusetts School Building Authority to reinstate the Accelerated Repair Program for 2024 applications. And be it further resolved that the Massachusetts Association of School Committees calls upon the Massachusetts Legislature to allow public preschools to be included in the Accelerated Repair Program and the core program.
I will make a motion to support resolution number 5 as proposed by the MAS.
6.
I think. No, 5.
Sorry.
I have
Sorry,
6.
sorry.
5. Resolution 5 as proposed by the MASC Board of Directors related to Massachusetts School Building Authority.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Sorry. All right, number 6. That's you.
I have resolution number 6, which is the School Bus Stop Arm Surveillance Act and Enforcement and Penalties. And it's been submitted by the Peabody and Marlborough School Committees. They've been seeing problems with drivers passing stop school buses, which is causing a danger to students. And they, I believe it is Peabody, they have contracted with a company that is collecting data by installing cameras on sides of school buses they're only activated during the time that the stop sign has been deployed. It's just during that time. And it urges state legislation to pass the law for cities and towns with just to have the ability, not that it would require it, it wouldn't be a state mandate, just the ability to install live video detection monitor systems for the purpose of enforcing violations against the owner of a motor vehicle when vehicle failed to stop for a school bus. So it is, bear with me, it's a lot.
I think
it's right here. Yeah, it's a long one. Therefore, be it resolved that the Massachusetts Association of School Committees calls on the Massachusetts legislature to enact legislation to pass into law the ability for cities and towns to install on all school buses live digital video detection monitoring systems for the purpose of enforcing violations against the owner of a motor vehicle whose vehicle failed to stop for a school bus when required to do so by law. And be it further resolved that the Massachusetts Association of School Committees calls on the Massachusetts legislature to enact legislation raising the fine for passing a stopped school bus to a significant schedule of fines as penalty whether witnessed by a police officer or recorded by a digital video detection monitoring system. Do you want to make a motion? Yes. And I will make a motion to, I will make a motion to support resolution number 6 as proposed by the MASC Board of Directors related to School Bus Stop Armed Surveillance Act and enforcement and penalties.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I just wanted to mention, somebody from Carver was on that call too, and they were able to access grant funding to get that installed in their buses, and they said it's working really well, so just food for thought, I think.
Thank you for being on that call. All right, I have 7 and 8. So resolution number 7 is related to MCAS, and I will read the resolution and you'll get the gist of it. So resolution 7, submitted by Framingham School Committee, therefore be it resolved that MASC urges Massachusetts to develop a wider, more consensus-built strategy for an evaluation system with meaningful input from legitimate stakeholders. That MASC urges the state legislature to launch a comprehensive evaluation to investigate the extent of biases pertaining to MCAS testing and to make these results public. That MASC urges Massachusetts to enact a moratorium on MCAS testing effective immediately, and that MASC urges Massachusetts to develop an alternative to the high-stakes MCAS tests. So.
One other thing from that call, they said this one may be voted in pieces because there are 4 of them and committees may not want the whole thing.
Want the whole thing?
Yep.
Okay. How does this committee feel about it? All 4 pieces of it? Talk it through.
I don't like number 3.
You don't like number 3?
The moratorium.
The moratorium?
Mm-hmm.
Until they have something to replace it.
Yeah.
Do others agree? Yeah.
And 4th is confusing. Are they developing an alternative to the concept of high stakes test or the specific MCAS test? So are they arguing for not a high stakes test?
Yeah, it's a little bit unclear, but I think what they're saying is to develop an alternative. It does say to the high stakes MCAS test, so
Right.
to
So
replace
just
with
replace
another
with another high stakes test?
Another high stakes test?
That's true.
Yeah, maybe if that just said, find an alternative to the high stakes testing.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't know what they're asking.
Yeah,
And
the
it-
portfolio approach has been tossed around
Yeah.
as an alternative.
Usually the high stakes refers to the grade 10 requirement.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's so many different moving parts to it, and they're gonna be changing. It sounds like they could be changing it on the floor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I personally would vote no. I guess we could vote no action. That's a possibility. We did that on one. Well, it's like you're not voting no, but you're voting no action.
Yeah. Yeah, and then Ally gets to make the decision on the
Yeah.
floor.
Yeah.
Really, that's yeah. That's right.
Especially if she makes the wrong decision.
That's right. I'll never let her hear the end of it.
I know.
Yeah, exactly.
So on this one, are people leaning more towards taking no action on all 4 points or supporting the first two and not the last two? Or just make it more straightforward and say no action and give Ally the,
No action means Ally has the leeway to vote her conscience.
Yeah.
I trust her
Yeah.
conscience.
I do as well.
I do too.
Okay, all right. Change the motion a little bit.
That's fine. I will make a motion to vote no action to resolution number seven, as proposed by the MASC Board of Directors related to MCAS resolution.
I'll second.
Do we need to clarify that Ally will make, or does just
So
that,
they
but
did
no
talk
action?
about that on the call too, and they're basically said it's up to your delegates
Okay.
when they go there.
When there's no
So,
action.
and whether we, even if we voted one way and she decided
Yeah.
to go no.
Yeah. So this
She was
is
trusting us,
We're
very
trusting
trusting.
her.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm just getting your
12
input.
minutes.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
All right, so no action. All right, so the motion is to take no action on number 7. And Matt seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Resolution 8, the last one, safe storage of firearms. This was submitted by the Framingham School Committee. And this is, where is the? Get my book.
Oh, it's
Let me
not-
get my
it's
book out.
not
I know, I
there.
don't,
Yeah.
I can't see it on the bottom of what's in there. Sorry.
Here it is.
There it is, I found it. All right, so this one is about, as the name suggests, teaching about safe storage of firearms. So the resolution is therefore be it resolved that MASC recommends all districts to urge their superintendent and staff to create an appropriate communication to parents and guardians that explains the importance of secure firearm storage to protect children and teens from unauthorized access to unsecured firearms and their legal obligations consistent with Massachusetts safe storage law. Be it further resolved that MASC urges other communities to work with local law enforcement agencies, health agencies, and nonprofit organizations to collaborate and increase efforts to inform district parents and guardians of their obligations regarding secure storage of firearms in their homes and vehicles. I mean, this is, another one of the schools having to take on responsibility for things at home, which can be fraught, but
You can understand that
also-
the community has a tragedy with this, how it affects all of the schools, and it's
Exactly.
particularly related to schools, even though it's in people's homes.
Exactly, yes, so there is the connection.
It's mandated, is that urging?
Yes.
Yes. I initially didn't like it because it's like sort of outside of the scope of schools, but it's just sharing information. So I don't see that as a bad thing.
Yes. Being the person who would be urged to do such thing, any objections? or
Yeah, I think it's
concerns?
a public health issue, and it it requires a community response of which the schools are a part of it. So I think wording, attempts to make it a public health issue, but I think we all need to be working on this issue, and it's important, but that it's the school's efforts alone is not, we're not gonna be as impactful as we are when we work together as a community.
We have such a good relationship with the Hingham Police Department, and I'm sure they could be helpful. Weighing on it.
Do we currently collaborate with health, like the Board of Health and nonprofit organizations?
I think that we're trying to, that reestablishment of the wellness committee.
Yeah.
To be a broader
Yeah,
group
exactly.
that allows us to tackle and use community resources and work together. Common messaging.
Awesome.
Yeah.
What do you think? You want to make a motion?
Yes, I will make a motion to support resolution number 8 as proposed by the MASC Board of Directors related to safe storage of firearms.
I'll second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, great, thank you. Okay, thanks, Rich. All right. To discuss grants and donations, which is 9.4. So I think we have a couple. We've got a grant from 2PRS, and that's the only one, I think? Yes, all right. Do you want to
Make a motion.
make a motion? Did everybody read it? It's a $200 grant.
Yes.
Okay. From Ray Gooley Electric for books.
I'll make a motion to accept the donation of $200 from Ray Gooley Electric for books to be bought for the library in memory of Roger L. The books purchased will become the property of Hingham Public Schools.
And just to clarify, these are books to be bought for the library at Plymouth River School.
Yes.
Thank you, Regularly Electric.
Yes, thank you, Regularly Electric. Do we have a second? Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Great. And then, sorry, I don't know why I just did that. We got the donation. All right, and then there's a grade 6 middle school novels de-accession? Yes.
Yep.
Yes. Do you wanna?
Yep, I made the motion, so I don't have to say that word. I will make a motion to declare the grade 6 middle school novels in the attached listing as surplus materials and to authorize the Director of Business and Support Services to dispose of the books at the least cost to Hingham.
Second.
Second.
Thank you.
As much as my heart breaks for the Swiss Family Robinson.
Mine does, yeah.
Yeah, sad. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, approved. And then grade 11, 12 environmental science textbook de-accession.
I will make a motion to declare the grade 11, 12 environmental science textbooks in the attached listing as surplus material and to authorize the Director of Business and Support Services to dispose of the books at the least cost to Hingham.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, great.
Middle school bonfire, here we come.
Don't do that.
Yes. Maybe you should donate one to school committee for us to read.
Exactly.
Thank you.
All right, subcommittee and project reports.
Yep. So real quick, we have a special education subcommittee meeting next Wednesday, the 25th, I think. 25th is a Wednesday. And that's going to be a hybrid, in-person Zoom. And then for HEF, we have the spelling bee coming up, or they have the spelling bee coming up on November 5th. So thank you to Jen, Carrie, and Tim for participating as judges. I'll be there as a timekeeper, and we're looking forward to it.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
Alex?
Can I have a question,
Yes.
Matt? Just my schedule is confused. I have the CPAC meeting from 5 to 6 and the special ed subcommittee 5 to 7. Are they CPAC and special ed committee combining that week, or are they one's 1 hour and one's the other? Or
I don't know.
I don't know. Do I have
I don't have a CPAC meeting.
Oh, never mind. Maybe that's a
My
mistake in my
guess is-
schedule. I apologize then.
5 to 7 for.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. So I guess it's all special ed, and I must have somehow written in CPAC. Sorry.
That's just for you.
Your phone
I meant to ask you about that. I was confused by my calendar because, human error.
Okay, Hingham Arts had a board meeting last week. This weekend was the Arts Walk, which they had very positive attendance. They had Little Shop of Horrors from the Drama Club. The students were there doing some performances from the show, get everyone excited for the upcoming production. And they said they had a lot of good conversations with people about the arts in Hingham. They have a couple of dates to put on the calendar. January 3rd, they're going to have an alumni panel with students from not necessarily Hingham Public Schools, but from the Hingham schools who've gone into careers in the arts to talk to the students about the process of applying to schools and portfolios and all that good stuff to help the upcoming high school students. On March 23rd, they'll have their annual social event. And then they also just approved a grant for the middle school for a hip hop performance to come for all the 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. And then, what else? PRS is having school council on the 24th, and we have a policy meeting on Wednesday, the 18th.
Thank you.
Yes, we're going to, I'm scheduling an educational programming subcommittee meeting before the November 13th school committee meeting. It may end up, just because of scheduling and all the different negotiated meetings we have, it may just end up being a meeting with Katie and I will fill in the other committee members while you're at the conference.
Okay.
So you might get out of that one.
We love those ones.
I know. So, but I will, whatever happens, I will do the minutes quickly and forward them to you.
Okay.
Unlike the regular lackadaisical speed that I do the minutes.
I don't have anything new.
I just, Finance Facilities Subcommittee is meeting this Friday at 8:30, correct? Yes. And there are warrants in the packet.
All right. That's a good update.
October 20th.
Thank you. I don't have anything, but before we do leave, though, I just do want to make one comment. First, I want to thank the HEA representatives who were here tonight speaking. I think it's very important for us to hear their voices. I mean, they have the perspectives in the classroom and in the building, so hearing that perspective, I think, was really important, particularly for those who aren't on the subcommittee. And there were a lot of things, I think, that were brought up that were really important and things to think about, particularly if we can follow up on the correcting the language, just to say that, you know, some teachers will benefit from steps and lane increases. I think we've talked about this, that, you know, no one should be getting a negative paycheck. So we're going to try to figure out a solution to make that not happen. Certainly ensuring that paras are in the classrooms and with the students that need to be there. That's absolutely a priority, I know, for the administration as well as the school committee. So we need to ensure that that is happening. The one thing that was said, and I just wish I had said this earlier, but there's one comment that was made, and I'm not sure, they didn't specifically say that the school committee did this, but there was a comment made that when we were talking about the town meeting and the override, that people were misled and duped into thinking that that included that the override included a living wage, I guess was what was said. And anyway, I'm not sure, it was not stated that it was the school committee that misled, but that sort of felt like that was what it was inferred. And I just want to be very clear that we were incredibly transparent in our deliberations, in our presentations. We made hundreds of hours of presentations, public service announcement, comments, community coffees, talking with people, and never did we mislead or dupe people into thinking that there was more included in the budget than what was included in the budget. As a matter of fact, I think we were very clear in all of our presentations as to exactly what percentages we were including in that for personnel. So I did just want to make that clarification. I'm not sure if exactly who they were saying was misleading people, but I wanted to just clarify that the school committee was not in any way, shape, or form misleading anyone during the override process.
Yeah, and the materials are all on the website right now if anyone wants to go back and look and check that.
All right, thank you. Good point.
Along with the minutes.
Oh, and all the minutes for all the meetings, yes, thank you. All right, that being said, anything under 48 hours? Nothing? All right. Our next school committee meeting, very exciting, is October 30th. Well, that's not the exciting part. The exciting part is at Metco headquarters. So that will begin at 6:30 at Metco headquarters. Will we be doing transportation? Yep.
Will everybody come in, or is it?
I think, is everyone here in person, or are you away?
I should not be away, but I'm not sure I'm going to take the transportation.
Okay. All right.
Do I need to confirm the transportation piece or not?
That would be nice because
Yeah, yes, I don't know.
All right. Jacqueline, do you want to, if we do transportation to the Metco headquarters, will you come in person or are you going to do it via Zoom? We'll have a Zoom option too.
Where is it again?
Downtown Boston.
I think I would be
Doing Zoom. Okay, perfect. Totally fair. But you're welcome to ride on the bus if you want. Okay, with that, I will take a motion to adjourn.
I will make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, we are adjourned. Thank you so much.